and patch things up manually.
And the version changes in MySQL database.
Say that again.
And we can track if a version changed or not in MySQL.
Yeah, there is a version column in SQL, and it
Mhm,
shows you the previous versions for sure. But it's like more than just the container entity, right? So it's more than just the earn column referring to that container ID. It is in
mhm,
fact a bunch of other things that might point to that container ID. So it's a reference in that case. So you could take a dataset entity and a dataset entity that one of those aspects within a dataset entity could have a reference to that container earn or container ID. And so that's where um, this like reference cleanup is required to track down all of those things and remove them. That's a much more difficult operation to perform, which is why, we hope that the automation code that does it automatically for you is working.
mhm. Okay. And um, now, what is the first step? Could you repeat, please?
The first step is to try the post
Mhm,
in the Slack channel.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you would set that flag and then you would rerun the delete command.
Okay. Okay. So thank you.
Alrighty. So then Pankaj, we had a question around restoring indices.
Yeah, yeah. Just to give a background, we had our DataHub running on version 10, 10.2, and there we had around 300k datasets which we had ingested from Hive source, and we wanted to upgrade to 12.1. So after we did an upgrade, we wanted to do a cleanup of the datasets and re-ingest them because we were looking for a different platform instance name. So see, I tried deleting Fruits CLI, but it was taking a lot of time. So I just directly went to MySQL and deleted those data sets and their related entities. And then also I upgraded our Elastic from 7.x to 8.x. And in that way, I got a brand new Elastic. So I was trying to run restore indices on the new Elastic. And when I was running, I was getting an error where it says failed to do bulk upsert and then connection reset.
Yeah, so
Connection.
Elasticsearch 8 is not supported. So the highest version you can use is Elasticsearch 7 or up to OpenSearch 2.
Okay. But the regular operations are working fine. For example, if I just now I did ingestion through CLI, so it went to Kafka, and then from there the messages were processed, and then it was pushed to Elastic properly. But when I'm doing through a restore indices through data upgrade, in that scenario, it is failing to connect to Elastic. Means after doing a bulk upsert operation.
Yeah, I mean we don't support Elastic 8, so there's not much we can do. Like it does not. So you can try to put Elasticsearch 8 into compatibility mode for the older version of 7, and we've had community members try to do that without success. So I would definitely suggest going back to either Elasticsearch 7 or OpenSearch 1.x or 2.x.
Sure. So right now we are running our Elastic 8 in compatibility mode for 7.x. Yeah, so I'll try to switch it back to 7.x and see. Yeah, thanks. Any other issue, like could it be there other than just the Elastic version?
I mean, certainly switching back, like doing the manual delete in MySQL is not recommended. So it's yes, deletes do take a while, and it is largely due to the deletes being performed on Elasticsearch. So you might be in a situation where you've deleted data in in SQL, but that data still exists in Elasticsearch. And so really, if you kind of do that manual deletion process, you have to do a manual deletion process in both places, not just one. Um, it, what that typically would happen is performing queries might come back with a reference to something that doesn't exist in SQL, and you can get really weird UI behavior because of that data that is not in sync.
Got it. Yeah, I think I'll try reverting back to 7.x and see. Yeah, thanks.
David, I know that I think we had chatted about timeline for support for Elastic 8. Do we have a timeline on that? Did I just make that up?
We do not have any timeline for Elastic 8. So they deprecated the primary driver that we use. So there's a Java
Mhm.
high-level REST client that we use that is compatible up to 7, and then they deprecated it in 8. And so that is kind of where we're at. We're not planning on doing that, although we'd certainly uh, I'll never say I'm not going to say never, but it's certainly not a priority.
Mhm.
It is also a kind of a major rewrite. So our code is written with this assumption that there is one driver for Elastic. And so this would basically be taking all of the code that touches Elastic and saying, okay, now we have multiple implementations with driver A and driver B, and that code looks
Mhm.
very different. And so
Yeah.
we'd be looking at something like a parallel support of like Cassandra and MySQL, for example.
Mhm.
It's something like that. It's like a very different data store, well, driver, even though Elastic and OpenSearch and it's all Elasticsearch under the covers. Um, the driver interface is that different. So that just means a parallel implementation needs to be written.
Got it. Got it. I have a different question related to vulnerabilities. So in our org, we have a very hard, very strict policy where we cannot have end of life libraries. So one of the libraries is javax.mail. So it is coming from metadata utils through parsec RESTly client.
Java X dot what?
Javax.mail.
Java
So
X dot mail. Okay.
yeah, it's a causative dependency coming from parsec RESTly client and RESTly core, and it is directly used in one of the classes where only the exception name is used as an import statement. So uh, due to that, we are unable to go to production. So we were trying to remove that dependency and replace it with sun.mail, but we are facing some build issues. So is there any like possibility of getting rid of javax mail indirectly through the RESTly clients? Or
So we definitely can't get rid of the RESTly client. The RESTly client, unfortunately, is like the foundation of DataHub, the RESTly Pegasus stuff, right? That specific import, however, that Java XMail import, if it's in our classes, our Java classes, we can probably find a workaround to not import that class, but it will still be a dependency of the overall application because of that transitive dependency via the RESTly stuff. So
yeah,
just removing it in that class, I don't think solves your problem.
okay.
Is that
Would
correct? I mean, that's like if it's not being imported, is that okay?
Yeah, but still that library is coming as part of the package. So when we do a
It will. Yep.
multi scan, it's coming. So is it I tried replacing with sun dot means from sun's java xmail. uh, the builds were working fine, so I've not done the complete sanity test on the whole gms. So I'm just wondering whether this approach would work or not.
So what? So you mean replacing the import in our code base or replacing the import in the Restly code base?
Yes. So basically, in metadata utils, I added a Gradle constraint where I explicitly removed that package and then explicitly added a import for Sun's Java XMail. So
Hmm. S-
com.sun.mail, that package, and the builds are going fine because com.sun.mail's Java XMail internally is importing Java X mail, the Java X core library, and that somehow seems to work during the build.
and then you run into a problem later.
Uh, right now, means I just did a quick sanity test where just hit basic CRUD operations on few data sets. It's working, but I'm not sure. I've not done the complete testing as of now.
Honestly, I can't think of a situation where our product would be sending emails directly. Like typically,
Yes.
if we're going to do some sort of mail integration, we would integrate with an external email service. So here's in this case, what I would suggest is taking your changes to the build.gradle and
Yeah.
actually just opening up a PR on the open source project, and that if it doesn't automatically start running those tests, it'll run our complete CI test, and if all those
Yeah.
pass, then we can just merge that into our core product. That's fine because I really think that if we're not directly importing that library,
Yeah.
then our code is not using it. So only some sort of like remote use case, I guess, in Restly where it actually needs to send an email for some reason, which I don't think we'd be exercising that code path anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That was also I was thinking. It's not in the code execution path in any of the scenarios, so it should work. I'll try to raise a PR and see if the CI build passes.
Yeah, feel free to ping me in Slack and with the PR, and I can keep an eye on it as well to make sure it runs.
Sure. Sure. Thanks a lot. I'll do that.
All right. So, Josh, I know you had a couple questions.
Yeah, yeah, I responded to one of them, but I can elaborate a little bit more. Talking about your analytics question, Josh, for like coverage of columns and everything, similar to how we do like percent of data sets that have owners, percent of data sets that have tags, etc. So the way that we store tags, glossary terms, and descriptions on dataset columns, like schema fields, is like always a reference like on the data set itself. So we don't have a very clean way to like get the total columns and then get the number percentage of columns that have tags, etc. At least based on my understanding of our data model. I was looking at Elastic. I see David thinking too, so I want him to confirm or deny here. If it's possible to get like percentage of columns that have tags.
You would have to maybe like write code. Like the only way I
Yeah,
can think of doing is writing code, which
yeah,
basically would just read all the data and calculate those metrics on a data set by data set basis. The only other very remote possibility is Elasticsearch does have this ability to like write simple scripts in the query for like aggregation and stuff like that. This would be a very advanced kind of Elasticsearch query, and it might be remotely possible that that's doable. Um, but I think that like what I would do is hit one of our scroll APIs and just scroll through them all and perform that calculation manually, unfortunately.
yeah. If you have the willpower, you can do it. But it just might not be efficient. Nothing easy out of the box.
Josh, does that answer your question?
I think so. Thanks.
It's definitely something. So on the analytics side of things, I really, 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 really want us to find a way to kind of like make the underlying data model easier to access, and then kind of put external or open source charting tools on top of it. So something like Superset, because I know that there's just so much a desire for kind of like additional tiles in there, additional visualizations, additional slices, dices, all of those things. And the reality is like, we're just a bottleneck in kind of creating those new kind of visualizations. So my hope is that we can figure out how to kind of have a normalized kind of like metadata analytics data model, where what I've been talking to Shashanka a lot about, and David, I know we've talked about this a little bit as well. Basically making it or kind of making that code available for folks to kind of like dump out that data model into a reporting database. We don't want to have that, within MySQL itself, or like, we basically want to say like, here's the logic to go from the operational data in DataHub and then output it into a metadata analytics kind of like schema. And so making that kind of like an opt-in, you can take that code and run with it. But then I also think it would be really cool if we started kind of opening up that that data modeling logic to the community and just like had people contribute back to it. So no like immediate plans on that so far, but in terms of kind of having more customization, I think that's the direction we want to go. I just don't know when we're going to do it. So yeah, kind of a rambling tangent there. All right, and then Josh, I think you had another question around classification, correct?
Yeah, I reached out to everybody on the team, so my questions are all over the place. The classification one, it's another loaded one, but can the sample size be adjusted? Is there a way to like skip sample sizes if the value is null? And then like are the sample sizes going to extract the same ones each time? So, but what if nothing changes in the table? Would it extract the same or pick the same samples each call? Or is there something that's randomizing that to get a different sample each time?
So this is a question for somebody from ingestion. The ingestion code is what's actually performing the profiling, sampling, and things like that. So I actually don't know what logic is being used. Chris, unless you happen to know anything.
No, I just deal with the data once it's given to me. I don't know how it's generated actually.
Yep, same thing.
But yeah, I mean, great questions, and I'd like to know the answer too. But yeah, ingestion would definitely know the answer to this a lot faster than us.
I'm curious. I want to pull that up because this comes up a good amount. Do you guys know? Do you guys know where to point me to that code? Because I can try to dig into logic a little bit.
I would imagine it's depending on the connector code, like our ingestion.
Those would just be part of like the Snowflake.
Yeah, Snowflake.
Whatever.
Ingester.
Josh, are you all connecting with? I'm guessing you're running profiling with Snowflake. I don't think we have support for any other sources. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be in the Snowflake code somewhere.
Let's see here. No promises. I don't know how apt I am to actually get this or to help here. While we're kind of poking around in there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is someone from ingestion going to be on the troubleshooting call this afternoon?
That is a great question. Let me find out for you.
Let's look at that schedule.
Yeah,
there should be another ingestion session as well today.
Yeah. Yeah. So Herschel and Andrew are going to be on at the 12 p.m. Eastern session. So
hour and a half.
What is it? Hour and a half?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hour and a half.
Yeah.
So Herschel and Andrew will definitely be able to help you out there if you're able to join.
Yeah, if anyone knows, it's Herschel and Andrew.
Yeah, seriously.
Or Tomasz.
Or Tomasz, yeah. Actually, Tomasz might know this one better.
Yeah, that might actually be his domain.
Remember correctly. But now I'm just curious. I haven't looked into this in a long time. See how good my Python reading abilities are. Actually don't know where this is. I do know. So actually, Josh, just to make sure, on the classification side, like you're talking about like PII classification, right? We're not confusing that with profiling.
I should be classification, but I'll verify that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
because profiling would be like, I think we have better docs on that.
I can confirm it's classification. We didn't turn on profiling because we don't want to store any PII data in our data tool.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So there is a docs page for advanced guides classification. I dropped the link into the Zoom channel here. It does have some configuration options. I'm not sure if you've looked at that already.
So yeah, we do.
Yeah, I believe our team member who's working on classification have been living and breathing on these part, and they've been testing a few things in our non-prof for that.
Sure. So like the first one, can the sample size be adjusted? The config says sample size is set to default of 100, so it looks like yes. Are we able to choose not null sample values? Let's see. There's a table pattern, confidence threshold, info types. And then there's a minimum values threshold. Yep. Well, this is the minimum number of non-null column values required to process. So yes, for number 2. Number 3.
So number 2 is the minimum values threshold, right?
Yeah, so like for example, if you're like, well, the sample size is 100 and I need all 100 of them to be non-null, I think would just be setting minimum values threshold to 100 as well as sample size to 100 would be my guess without actually testing it.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable to me. Same.
Okay,
Then-
looks like the default would be 50, and then the sample size usually will be 100. So as long as there's 100, there's 50% of coverage, it will flag the classification.
That's what it looks like to me.
Mhm.
Same samples extracted each time. Let's see. The question would be whether or not it's doing a sort of any kind.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, this one I'm not sure. I would imagine it would be random, right? But like,
I mean,
I
it
don't
depends
know
on what
that.
your data store is, right? Because it's like if you have a sort on the data set itself, then that's going to inform what the order of output is, right?
Yeah.
But then also if you have like incremental loads, or if it's going to update day to day, which should, right?
Yeah.
So often what they do, like often, I don't know if this is the case in this code, but often what you would do is actually sort by random.
Yeah.
If you want to just keep getting a different sample every time it runs. I
Yeah.
don't know what the code actually does though.
Yeah. This is okay, Acral data classify. I remember us talking about this because there's I remember us going back and forth on whether or not to use random, and then also to kind of sample it based on like a certain window of time, right? So putting kind of like a time constraint on it. Let me see. I can find here. Ren and Josh, are you on the same team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me 3 months to figure that out. Or to put that together.
Wait
These
a
guys
minute.
Have a little gain of that out of us. That's
Mhm.
my ask very
Yeah.
beginning question for probably for another month or so.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was probably purposeful too, so that it wouldn't seem like we ask all the questions.
Oh, that's good.
You're slapping each other on the side, like pretend like we don't know each other. Play it
You're
cool.
like, oh, I also had that same question. Maybe we should
Oh, very
prioritize that.
interesting. Wow. Yeah, that seems to be coming up a lot.
That's good. You guys have a
Wait,
nice
you
strong
see our
group.
MO now.
Yeah, exactly. See right through you. Busted. Excuse me. Wait, so Ren, you said that you have, excuse me, my goodness, I just put coffee down, wrong side or wrong pipe. You have like a month left of what, testing or deployment or evaluation? What's going on over there?
It's really just inspiration. I'm sure we will still be coming up for more questions as we develop and learn more about the tools. But yeah, we already have a production instance, so we definitely are having people to get on board and use our tool. But we need to really be confident about the tool before we start sending more folks onto it.
Sure.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
It's exciting though.
That is super exciting. Right. How many, like how broad is the rollout going to be? Like, do you have a sense of like how many teams you want to be using it, or kind of what that rollout strategy would be? Those are two very different questions, I realize.
Yeah, I think Josh, you want to take that? I see you.
I'm trying to look at so I think the initial invite of users that they brought on was like 25 of
Mhm.
kind of heavy users of our tool that we're kind of replacing. And the I think we had like an average of like 130 active members in our last tool.
Oh, okay.
So I assume that I know that they did like a second rollout of like people who have used that tool over like the past 30 days. And then I think they did like the past 3 months and then the past year for kind of like training.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I would say in the next 4 to 6 months, there'll probably be over 300 different sign-ins accounts at least.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Do you guys feel like are there any kind of like blockers to that migration that we can help you think through, like either from a functionality standpoint or stability? Like, so, Ren, you said that you want to make sure that it's in good shape before you roll it out. I'm curious, like, are there specific kind of areas of concerns or yeah, I don't know, anything that's kind of popping up that might prevent it?
Ren, pull out the list.
Oh no, there's a list. Oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, there is a really long list.
The beauty of open source. Anything's possible, right? That's funny. But in all sincerity, I would be very curious to learn from that. I think, we have, especially with larger companies that end up coming in, more often than not, they have an existing platform, like a metadata platform, right? Maybe they built it in-house, maybe it's a kind of like a paid solution or a commercial tool that maybe isn't, I don't know, not kind of suiting the use case anymore. And so with those migrations, right, like the good thing is that you have organizations that already kind of have a culture around metadata management or discovery, or, like it's not a foreign concept that you kind of have to get buy-in, but then you do have to get buy-in into like, well, this tool that you've been using for years and and love, surprise, now there's something totally different, right? And it's yes, we've seen that kind of migration pattern quite a bit, and it's always very fascinating to see how folks will start to customize DataHub to like actually start to fill some of those gaps, and it's just very fascinating to me.
So far, our current implementation are out of the box, so we didn't have a lot of customization in place just yet. However, the internal groups feedback are very positive. Most folks really like the UI and the usability of it. The searches is definitely great functionality for user may not be very comfortable on doing query or not like the expert of doing query. It's a great exploration tool for people who's more business side for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome to hear. I just remembered, were you all asking about restricting search access last time?
I'm sure that's a question we would probably ask at some point if we didn't.
I'm reading your mind. We just rolled out, and David, I think did it make it into 13? The work that you did?
Sorry, which work?
Search access.
Search access controls. So yes, it is in 0.13. It is disabled by default, and
Mhm.
I would not turn it on yet. I would consider it a work in progress.
Yeah.
The next point release, so 0.13.1, is
One,
probably
yeah.
the first one where I would actually say, let's turn this on. Um,
Hmm.
so we've been doing internal, so like more thorough, deep internal testing of it, right? And we've got some problems with it. So I would leave it off for now.
Yeah, I see that your 13
Very diplomatic.
updating Java to 17 and
Mm.
Python to 3.10.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a lot of
A
major
lot.
updates. Um,
Yeah.
the search access controls kind of came after those updates. Uh, I don't know. It was a massive release, right? So we definitely
Yeah.
incremented that middle version. And search access controls was kind of like a little bit rushed in order to meet that, cutoff for the release. And so, it didn't go through as much testing as we would have liked, but it is
Hmm.
turned off by default. So,
That's
um,
why we did that.
you can
Turned it off
turn
by
it on.
default.
Hmm.
And so what are some of the problems that I know about? Um, so one example is we have a DataHub system user that is used for like internal communication between our components. And that system user is actually not detected as a system user. And so if you have policies set up to deny access, and don't grant that access, that user will not be able to get any results. And so that would break functionality. So that's why I say don't turn it on. Um, Other cases, uh, one of the features of search access controls is to be able to say, okay, I only want um, this group who owns an asset or owns a data set, for example, of a specific type. And so that group type ownership doesn't work. The individual user type ownership does, but via a group doesn't. So there's a bug there as well. So certain policies can trigger these things. Very basic policies based on ownership that does work. Um, so you can certainly turn it on in like maybe a test environments, and that's probably fine, but I would definitely not turn it on in a production environment just yet.
Yeah, so as you guys start to roll out to other teams or kind of out more broadly, I think one of the patterns that we've seen more for larger organizations, and again, I'm not based off of kind of like the number of users you're anticipating. I'm guessing there's a good chunk of um, or like a high volume of data sets or assets that you have in there. And so, this is all kind of coming from feedback that we've heard where folks are saying, it's great. It's easy for me to ingest all this metadata. But now on the flip side of that, now we have all of this data in here and it's confusing for people who may not kind of have context about the entirety of our data ecosystem or maybe there's information in there that's like more confusing than it is beneficial or just some kind of cruft that you want to kind of hide or gate a little bit. So the search access stuff that we're doing is giving much more fine-tuned controls over who can actually view results through the search experience. So that way, ideally that moves us towards having more relevant and accurate search results for people, kind of cleaning out some of that noise, and also just giving much more control over the granularity of who can see what. And so Ren, when you were talking about not wanting to actually store PII data, for example, maybe at some point you do want to start storing some sample data, something that's a little bit more sensitive, whatever that might be. This gets us much closer, or this gets us to way more control over who can even know that those assets exist, then go see them, and so on and so forth. So if and when you guys are getting to a stage where you want to kind of customize that a little bit more, definitely keep us posted because we're also in general, I think we have some work to do to kind of clean up the explainability of our access control story. It can get a little bit complex. So that's an area that I want to start digging into the next few months. Long ramble over. It's just top of mind because we've been testing out a ton of different scenarios this week to get that out there.
There was some changes that you guys had coming. One of them was around like import export. You guys wanted to like revamp that or make changes to it. What is that still in the roadmap, or has anything happened with that yet?
So we've started talking to some folks from a company called Optum, where so they've done a bunch of contributions to the project in the past, and so we just kind of have an ongoing dialogue with them. They are actively building out that exact functionality. So basically, dump data into a CSV. You can update descriptions or add tags or kind of annotate those records through a CSV and then import it back into DataHub. So they're actually building that out for their internal use cases. And so what we're talking to them about is trying to figure out, is this, is it so specific to their organization that like, does it make sense for that contribution to come back, or for that, I'm sorry, for what they're working on to be contributed back? I think there are some interesting edge cases where they're thinking about basically like exploding out the number of columns. Okay, how do I explain this? So for a given data set, if you have 5 glossary terms assigned to it, instead of having a list of glossary terms in a single column within your CSV or your Excel or whatever, actually exploding that out to be like glossary term 1, glossary term 2, glossary term 3, glossary term 4. That's looking like a better user experience for what their internal use cases want to be. It's not necessarily the approach that I think we would take for ours, because we want it to be more flexible and not like deterministic of how many columns or how many specific kind of columns can you add or enrichments can you add to a single data set. We want to make it much more flexible to say, give us a list and we'll apply it. So anyway, we are talking to them about it there. We will, whenever possible, we love to take contributions, and at least even if they're like partial or something for us to work on or work or build off of. But so in those conversations, we're trying to figure out how much of that can they contribute back versus do we need to build it net new. But it is coming up constantly. Like, people really want this, and so it's definitely on our 2024 roadmap for sure. It's just a matter of when we do it.
That might be something we'd be able to help contribute with too. I mean, I know that we're trying to build that internally. That Rin had a question at like the top of the hour last time of, we're able to export it, make changes, and port it back in. But when we import it back in, sometimes it errors out, and even when it's the exact same ingestion again of the same file, it'll run. Sometimes it'll run and it'll say it's completed, but it doesn't do the updates, and other times it does. So it's the re-import is our buggy part that we're trying to almost fix at this point. The export isn't perfect, for a user standpoint, but it's doable at this point.
We have a semi-manual solution that will allows import, and they will backend run the GraphQL, which allow the export of the input value, like what platform, what schema, what tables that you needed, and it will allows you to do a wildcard search and export out to a CSV. Allow user to make the modification, and we have a button on the UI say import this, which will store the file into an internal Azure Blob container. And right now it's semi-manual. Me or Josh or someone from the platform side will trigger the CSV ingestion, which offer the semi user input and export path.
I would love, if you guys would be open to it, I'd love to see a demo or kind of like go through that workflow with you, because it is top of mind and kind of conversations we're having. And if anything, just to kind of like learn from how you approached it, right? Like, what are your use cases? What's the use, or like, what's your feedback are you hearing? How well is it working? All that fun stuff. So if you'd be open to it, I'd love to schedule just kind of like a one-off session with you and maybe bring in Shashank if possible.
Yeah, we can do that. We can bring in our developers who are working on it too, and
that'd be great.
Together too, and have some ideas off of each other.
Cool. I'll make a note. This week's going to be a little slammed. I'll follow up with you guys next week on that.
Okay.
All right. So for folks who have joined, welcome. We're getting close to rotating over or kind of switching over to our next session, which is just getting started in DataHub. So we'll have some people kind of cycling in, cycling out, but welcome aboard. I'm happy to have you here with us. I'm just taking some notes so I don't remember or so I don't forget to follow up.
Hey Josh, there's some follow-up notes about the sample selection, like that sort in the Slack channel. I just wanted to mention that it looks like uh it's going to be random based on the default behavior of Snowflake. So there is no explicit sort. So it depends on the underlying system.
Okay, thanks.
Alrighty.
I'm gonna go grab another cup of coffee. Kind of
Do it
we're
up.
nearing the session
Yeah,
switch over.
grab that coffee. We
I will be
gotta stay
in the next
fueled.
session as well. So I will be back in 2 minutes.
We'll time you.
See you too.
All right, well, it is the end of our session, so we got to choose a swag winner. Josh, have we given you swag yet?
I don't have swag. I got a gift card.
We gotta get you swag.
Gotta
All
get him
right.
swag.
Congratulations, sir. You're the swag winner of the hour.
Thanks.
I'm gonna send you over I'll send you over a link to get that all settled. And Ren, I saw you responded today. Thank you for your patience in getting you your swag. I appreciate you.
I have to go wear my swag, so maybe John will find me.
I know.
Man, that'll be so fun when we get to a point where there's so much DataHub swag in the world that you can't walk down the street without seeing someone
That's what we need.
wearing. That's what the people want.
Is that the third DataHub session I've seen on this walk? Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously. I forgot that, Josh, I forgot that you're in San Diego. That's so funny. All right.
Mhm.
San Diego swag day, exactly. Ren, are you also in San Diego?
I'm based off around DC. I'm
Oh,
30
nice.
minutes
Okay.
around away from DC.
Nice.
Awesome. All right.
Hey,
Hi, Ryan.
Hey,
How you doing?
how's it going?
Great.
Good.
All right. So, David, you're sticking around. Chris, I think you are officially off duty.
Cool. Yeah, I might hop off. I'm back on in probably I think a couple hours when I'll be back
Yep.
for sure. But yeah, it was nice hanging with everyone. I'll see y'all later.
We'll see you, Chris.
Bye.
Oh, cool. Oh, Sudhakara, thanks for sending over that that sample. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I joined a bit late, so I had only off. So I was not sure about that. So
Yeah. Thanks for sending that over. I forgot. That's right, because we're executing a sample query to Snowflake. So it's like Snowflake is determining how that sampling logic is going to happen. So that I forgot about that. Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
All right. So I'm going to hand things back over to Jeff. Jeff, last time around, we accidentally ended the Zoom.
Okay.
So when we're handing off, we got to make
Oh,
sure that
I
we're
ended the
doing.
Zoom. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay. We're back. We made it. We're here.
Okay, good.
So just a heads up on that one.
Yeah.
And all right, we had Bruno and Susan recently joined. Josh and Ren have been sticking around. Sudhakar has been hanging around as well. I don't
Great.
think we have any open questions for now. But yeah, I'm gonna step up for a little bit. Now I'm
Great.
very, very paranoid about hitting this end button.
Yeah. Let's switch co-host. Am I co-host now?
How? Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me make sure I do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
I'm
good.
gonna do it. And
You're good.
if I end it, okay, no, it'll be fine. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oh wait. Yeah.
Looked like it worked.
And we're live. Yay. Okay. David, Ryan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Good deal.
Wish I didn't have dehumidifiers running all day long, but yeah.
Yeah? Dehumidifiers?
Plumbing.
Yeah. Plumbing issues. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Let's check the Slack channel. Excuse me. Let's see. Well, can you guys catch me up in the last issue that we were talking about with Sudhakara? This looks kind of interesting. What issue were we looking at here?
Oh, so the last thing we kind of was the question was around classification sampling. It was a kind of more of a ingestion question, but we kind of dug into it and figured out that there's like a three-part question. It was earlier in the Zoom channel, which you can't see. The
Which
first
I was
part
there for.
was
Yeah.
oh, okay, so you did get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like just questions around classification, like sampling, things like that.
Yeah. Well, for my own knowledge, let's because that's a feature I haven't come across as much around classification. So what are some of the things I would need to know if I'm looking to employ this feature with Snowflake?
So probably you've got the wrong engineers here for this. It's more of an ingestion question. And so Ryan and I
course.
are both platform.
Right.
So like we deal with the data once it gets to us. So I'm
For
not
sure.
sure how it actually necessarily gets into the system.
Gets in the system. Yeah.
Right. So, but in general, like ingestion, like you would define a recipe that describes how you want it to be configured, and then you run the recipe either via the managed GUI or via the CLI, and then the data appears.
Right. Yep. Okay. And so
There is an advanced guide, like on the left-hand side, you see advanced guides. There should
yes.
be an advanced guide for classification. Let's see, yep,
Oh.
there, right there. And so this is kind of where we started, as far as like non-ingestion engineers trying to figure it out. So this is where we started. Half or two-thirds of the questions were answered by the doc. The other question was not, so we had to dig into the code. So
Okay. And those active questions from Josh were, can the sample size be adjusted? So we do have that here. Number of sample values.
and how can
And
we guarantee the values are non-null values? So that's towards the bottom.
yeah. Okay.
Basically, keep scrolling.
Yep.
It was minimum values threshold, and the description talks about non-null values.
Minimum grade. Okay. To process values prediction factor. Okay. Another key, and some things that stood out in looking at this. For one, we have the supported information types. Okay. So classification is going to look for these kinds of things around email address, gender, credit card numbers, etc. Works within Snowflake. This can be turned on in our Snowflake ingestion recipe, classification enable true. Classifiers of type DataHub. with this being a much more fleshed out example. Info type to term, email address should be email, okay. So this, for example, is going to map, it's going to go through a routine, look for things that look, walk, talk, act like an email address, and we're going to apply glossary term of email that's already in our system, would be the result here. Then we have the ability to look at the prediction factors, weights, etc. Okay. Cool question, cool thing to look through. Okay. Let's see. Any questions from the room? Can I kind of open it up? Is anyone here for their first office hours marathon?
I am here, Nate Holmes.
Hey, Nate, how's it going?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Very well, very well. So your first office hours marathon or your first time to come to a community event?
Yes, my team is looking at DataHub to provide, some more like data categorization and ingestion into our system. Our team maintains a data lake for our company, so we thought DataHub could be a good open source solution for us. So very much just kind of in an exploratory phase here.
Excellent. And so where are you at in your in this exploration? Have you stood up the service locally, or just kind of thinking about it, or where you at?
At one point, so it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. So we actually have explored other like paid solutions in the past. It kind of fell apart on us.
Yep.
We tried at one point, we had an engineer hired to help us with this task and start exploring DataHub, but he actually left the company before we really got the ball rolling. So, we're still kind of stuck at that phase one.
Cool. Well, perhaps a good place to start would be kind of a quick 10-minute, like, here's what to do if you're just getting started. Would that be something you'd be interested in going through?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Cool. I am on the sales engineering team here, solution architect, do kind of work throughout, also engage with the community as well. So great to meet you, Nate. Really the place to start here is you need Docker on whatever you might be running. You need a happy whale, so it needs to be running and active. You need to be able to open a terminal. Nate, are you on like Windows, Mac, or something else?
Mac.
Okay, great. So you just kind of open up your terminal application. These three commands, copy them together, and then run them, and you should see this DataHub versions. Do you have the DataHub CLI installed?
I do not yet, no.
Okay, so give this a shot. This maybe even while we're talking, if you want to pull up terminal, and let me go ahead and show and not tell here. Let's pull up my terminal. Let's clear it. And so the first thing that's going to happen is I'm just upgrading the Python basics here, making sure they're at the latest version. And then I'm going to do an install of the actual DataHub package in PyPy. And then after that, the DataHub CLI should be installed into your like core path of your system. And so when I run these three things, I'm effectively upgrading to the latest version in my case because I have the DataHub CLI installed. And so that last command is going to spit out a version for me. Okay. So this last command shows me DataHub CLI is at 13.0, our latest version. Here's my active Python version. So that's a good sign you're on track. If you're having issues there, and I have in the past, the best way to check is this is like a Python module, and so running this command should show you the DataHub version, and either like kind of tearing everything out, tearing your Python stuff out a little bit and starting over, or just setting up an alias against this should serve what you need here in your CLI.
Gotcha.
From
Looks
there,
like I have, I mean, we don't have to go through the errors, but it looks like I just have some compatibility issues with some other dependencies like Jinja or URL-lib that I need to upgrade.
yeah,
The Python 3-m DataHub version command actually works fine, but the CLI didn't install quite right. So I'll work through that on my own.
Yeah, I mean, if we were all smart enough, everything would be a dev container, right? But I'm still working on that myself. But yeah, you might find if you want to run in a container or something like that to just get to a clean place to run the CLI, that might help rather than everything. You know, I've definitely gotten my own Python environment kind of mixed up a little bit. So the next step is just to run Docker Quick Start. DataHub Docker Quick Start is really a shortcut that makes it where you don't really have to care that much about Docker Compose, but effectively this is a wrapper to run Docker Compose. And like it says here, you can inspect that Docker Compose if you're curious about what it's running. And so what you'll see here, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a run. And I have a couple versions of DataHub going, but I think this should work okay. So right now, what we're seeing is DataHub's comprised of the core elements of a 3-tier web application. So we have a MySQL backend database. We have an API tier. That would be the GMS, DataHub GMS. And then we have the UI in here somewhere. And
what does that GMS stand for? Sorry, that's a silly question.
Ooh, that's a good David question. What does GMS stand for?
Generic metadata service.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
It was an acronym that existed well before I joined.
Yeah. At this point, everybody knows it as GMS, but I've been around for a long time, so I remember the acronyms.
One of many TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, right? Where we forget the meaning, but it just means GMS. Functionally, that's the core API endpoint of really everything going in and out of DataHub. Some backend services that are part of it that as a user you're not going to need to actively care too much about, though, but it's good to know they're there, is Elasticsearch. And so Elasticsearch serves as the caching layer throughout. So as you're actually looking at assets and searching for things throughout DataHub, Elasticsearch is the mechanism that's performing that, or the where it's getting that information from. So MySQL is the system of record, and Elasticsearch is the caching layer, effectively. And then the other piece is Kafka's in play here. So as you progress in your journey, you may come across use cases where in open source that you want to access the events that are flowing through those Kafka topics. And there's some very interesting and powerful use cases that can be supported through that.
And that actually does tie into a conversation we had last hour where we were discussing 2 specific topics that if you're specifically interested in like looking at all changes being performed in the system, there are 2 topics, the MCL topics, which contain basically a record, a before and after change event for everything that happens on the platform. So generally if you're looking for a comprehensive audit trail, the topics, those MCL topics are that location.
Yeah, definitely. And then also when you're looking to say, customize that something happened in your DataHub instance, and you'd like to maybe send like that, like what Ryan was talking, I don't know if it was Ryan or David, but like just writing that out to an audit log can be really helpful from an auditability standpoint, all those change log events. Also, like taking an action upon them. Like if you would like to build a customization where if a tag is put into a given asset or applied to a given asset, that you would like that information to kind of route back and write back to a source system or to another place. Or if you would like for a maybe a tag is applied against an asset that says we have a operational incident here and we want to feed that into a ticket system. These kinds of like custom integrations can be done very effectively through that. As you're looking to set this up, that's not your initial place you're going to work.
So it looks like you got a
conflict.
problem here. So maybe we take a look at like actually debugging it.
Let's do it.
So we can see there that the MySQL container is not starting or is unhealthy. So we want to get the logs essentially. So you should be able to just type was it Docker logs and then give it the name of that container. All right. Interesting. Oh, is it possible that you had previously been running a different quick start instance with a different MySQL database?
That's absolutely right.
All right. So then, are you familiar with the nuke option? And are you willing to lose the data? So that's the other question.
Oh yeah, always.
Okay.
In my case, yes.
All right. So there's the Docker command allows you to do a quick start nuke. I think is under one of the options under quick start, I believe.
It's just Docker nuke, DataHub Docker nuke.
DataHub Docker nuke. There it is.
There we go. DataHub Docker nuke. And that's going to remove all Docker containers, networks, and volumes associated with DataHub. Is it likely to have a conflict on the volume?
That's exactly what it is. So there's an old volume that has some data from a different version of MySQL already on your system. So this will remove the volume, and then we can rerun the quick start command to recreate that volume with an empty content.
Yep. And to the audience watching, what's functionally happening is I run our like managed service locally, and that's why I'm seeing this conflict. Is I had a managed service instance running locally that conflicts with open source, but this can definitely happen as you're standing up new quick start instances or like running Docker Compose locally, and for various reasons, right?
And so typically you'll see this. Especially when there are updates to the underlying MySQL version. For example, like switching from MySQL 5 to 8 is going to result in this kind of conflict. That's typically like those major version updates, like for Elasticsearch, MySQL, the data stores essentially is where you're going to mostly run into this. In some cases, changes to the data model might produce a conflict, but in general, the data model is backwards compatible. So a newer version of DataHub should be able to read all of the old data that's stored in SQL. And very, very rare cases that might not be the case, but generally there's a migration process to patch that up before the new version can start in that case.
Yeah.
So if you're nuking this, does it get rid of all of the data then that's stored in DataHub?
Absolutely, yep.
So is there a way that you can, I guess, save it or something before you, right? So you're not having, I guess, can migrate over once it's fixed, or are you just having to restart from the beginning all over again?
So there are ingestion recipes with sources and sinks so that you can if you have to have a running system first of all. So you have to have the old version running, and you would have to run a specific recipe to export it from the existing instance and write it to a file. So that's like essentially a backup process, and then replay that back into the new instance once it's up and running. Quick start though is generally designed to just like to play around and experiment, and is not really intended for a production system. Just a caveat there.
I think its greatest use, and it's so much. It's the first place I would go when I'm starting to test ingestions. Like what you should be bringing it up locally. You're going to have a private environment where you can be a little like you can kind of just tinker a bit and say, okay, I have my Snowflake source. I want to see what comes in with Snowflake. I want to look at it in the GUI. Then I want to put DBT up. I want to put all these other services. And so really this, because the first place to really look in DataHub as a new DataHub user is lineage. You need to work to, there's a lot of like, we need our keys to be named like consistently, basically. And so that's really that initial use case that I would look at here. To come back to what we were doing, so we ran DataHub Docker nuke. Let's go ahead and run that quick start command again. So this is going to launch Docker Compose again. Should be pretty fast because everything was local. Everything is cached now. We're going to see the base services start up first, which are like the databases and the caching layer of Elasticsearch. And then once those are up and show healthy, we're then going to bring up GMS or API. API, of course, is going to depend on the backend database and the cache. And then, so it looks like we have started. Okay. Now we are watching the API come up soon. Should be actively running. Once GMS is up and healthy, then we'll see a UI that we can go into.
GMS plus the front end.
Yeah. I should see a bit of launch instructions here, but it's going to tell me to go to localhost port 9002 once the front end is up. Okay, so then Susan and Nate, as I know you're kind of the new to DataHub users here, what are the core sources that you're looking to first look at?
I think first and foremost, we'd be looking at Snowflake. But that would be a starting point. And to be honest, I haven't done a great job of looking at all of your sources.
Great place to start, though. Snowflake integration is going to be really robust, give you a lot out of the box. You're going to see a lot in the column level lineage and the richness of what you're getting there. So I think that's a great starting point. So the place to go here is going to be
one thing you might want to mention is before going to like a full-fledged ingestion source is just to load the sample data. I think a lot of folks would just do that just to see something in the UI.
Yeah. That's a good next step too. That can be done through the CLI. But ideally, the GUI is just going to be the most friendly way to do this. Let's go here to ingestion here. So as you can see, we have a pristine, clean DataHub instance. There's no assets at all. And a bit, if you haven't seen this before, you've got a search bar. We're going to start to see our assets as we ingest them kind of get loaded down here in the Explore Your Data section. Up here, once I've got stuff going, I can see like the usage of things, how many people are visiting it, what assets are there. I have a Govern tab here in which I can construct a business glossary of terms. I can organize my assets into domains. But all of these things kind of come after, like we need to get assets in. And how we would do that is to create a new source. And then I believe sample data, we can hit other here and you can take things, you can kind of copy and paste a recipe out of our docs into here. Sample data being a good one. Or sample example data.
I think it's called demo data.
Demo data, thanks. Okay, demo data here. And the simple recipe, can plug that in, config, hit next. You can schedule it when appropriate. You don't need to do that on this one. And then we'll call it demo data. Save and run. And this is going to pull some kind of default sources in and give us some assets to look at. We can, in this interface, this will be important as you're really running bigger ingestions. You've got a means of kind of seeing how these ingestions run. So I can click here and I can see the log of what's running. I can see it while it's running too. So if you're the kind of place that has thousands of Snowflake tables, it's going to kind of be iterating over it. The log looks and feels a lot like a data pipeline because it is. It's really looking through the APIs of the data sources that you're looking at and kind of scanning and collecting metadata out of these things. And you get some good information out of there. Or you'll see some decent information about what's getting loaded and where in these logs. It can be helpful if you're seeing errors and whatnot to kind of debug through this log. We can see that this ingestion succeeded. So if we click back up here into the top left, I can now explore a couple platforms. So I'll see that I have some content that is Hive tables and can look at the Hive data set. I can come in here and I can see in my impact analysis that I have a downstream table here, logging events. If I want to visualize this, just click on Visualize Lineage button here, and I can see how this data got here. It came from a Kafka Connect or Kafka, a Kafka source fed into Hive, flowed through these tables, going all the way to the ML feature store use case in this case. This gives me a little bit to look at here.
And so how is this lineage being determined? Is it just from the data itself, or do we have to include information about, how data gets to its various places along our pipelines?
The goal should be to automate this as fully as possible. As you kind of orchestrate queries through Snowflake, what is the mechanism in which you do so? Being like Airflow DBT.
Yeah, so we have Airflow and DBT, and Meltano in there as well, which pulls a lot of data into our S3 data lake. And then we have another set of DBT processes that bring the data from S3 into our Snowflake derived store. And that's kind of typically the endpoint there where, that's where we do our reporting and analysis and all of that.
Yeah. So my advice there would be to use our GUI, go into the ingestion tab, start getting in the order you described, Snowflake, Airflow, DBT, and S3 running. And you will then kind of see what really how the keys are aligned, I think, will be part of what you need to look at. In particular, DBT and Snowflake are kind of touching the same asset. Actually, I'll turn it over to Harshal if you don't mind to maybe discuss how DBT and Snowflake assets interact with sibling lineage and whatnot, and maybe how some early troubleshooting things about making everything match and align between the sources and the lineages.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from the UI, I think actually, Jeff, if you could pull up the demo data from like demo.datahub or maybe Longtail of like how we represent DBT, I think that's a pretty good representation of it. Broadly, like we're pretty DBT native in terms of how we represent them in the catalog. So we kind of recognize that DBT is a hybrid between kind of a data set in itself and like a processing system that materializes those tables. And so we show them in the UI as kind of a joint node that is produced by dbt and lives in, say, BigQuery or Snowflake. And then you can kind of see the view definitions or the the dbt SQL that you've written alongside those. If you define kind of ownership or tags or additional metadata in dbt in the meta fields, we also have mechanisms for pulling that out. And so that way, source of truth for metadata about dbt can live fairly close to the people who are writing dbt SQL, and then it'll still be able to reflect that and keep that up to date. And then, of course, we pull column level lineage for everything dbt as well. But yeah,
Cool.
I think that's
Yeah. Excited to get this going, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our team has been looking for, a data catalog and governance solution for a while now. So
yeah. So
definitely
my advice, get your quick start going, start standing up your ingestions. Demo data is a good place to look. It's just to get a hello world going, but get your stand up your main sources, and then where you're seeing the lineage. Maybe if the lineage doesn't align for any reason, our community Slack lineage or our ingestion channel is really the first place to look for troubleshooting or searching through the past log, because getting two systems to align from a lineage standpoint is very automatable in our system, but you may have a little tweaking to do on how you're doing your ingestions, and it may be unique to your own data sets as well.
Gotcha. And then what would be the kind of recommended deploy to production path? So, it sounds like first step, can run all this locally, play around with it, get some of the ingestions going and just see how things work. But then once we want to move into, maybe a dev and a prod environment, is there kind of a different deployment path that you recommend? We typically try to deploy everything onto our Kubernetes cluster. I don't know if you support that. Be interested in more.
You'll find you'll find like Helm chart instructions and how to run in the cloud of your choice, or in a generic Kubernetes cluster just using Helm.
Okay, cool.
In our docs. To put a pin in that. When it comes to migrating, let's say you have your local and then maybe a non-prod to prod environment. There is where appropriate, you can ingest data. DataHub is a source, so you can ingest from another instance. That's not really what you want to do, but just be aware it's there. It's useful for backups. It's useful for maybe migrating between two versions or things like that. What you should be doing though is in your ingestions, this is demo, over here in ingestion, you would take these, we support environment variables. You're going to find that it's pretty useful. This is a nice interactive tester for your Snowflake. And one of the reasons that I encourage you to work locally is you're not going to be able to use usernames and passwords, obviously, when you're in a Kubernetes managed environment. But locally, it's going to be okay because it's all private to you. But as you move forward, you would put environment variables and perhaps attach a secrets manager to manage those secrets in your environment. And then anything you design here can also be edited in YAML, and these recipes can be run in sort of a portable fashion. So you could technically run your ingestions and schedule them using the DataHub CLI, though we kind of encourage using the UI as much as possible. So here though, if I had, let me map out a little bit more in Snowflake to say, right, I could basically put this kind of stuff in here. My account, my warehouse, my password, my key. You're not going to have username and password. You're going to have a key. So you'll be using the YAML form, and you'll use environment variables to make the same recipe run against a different source. Rin?
Cool.
Is there any way we have an integration with like Key Vault or like Azure Key Vault or anything with these field?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be, you basically, like those kinds of services should be mountable to your images and can be added. Added to, you need it to be Ryan and David to the GMS pod, right? To have access to those secrets.
I'm sorry. So I
Like,
was
let's
looking
say
at
you
something
wanted to
else.
use HashiCorp Vault or another key or another
Hmm.
secrets manager.
So,
in
so
open
yeah,
source.
so depending on your environment, right, you can have different secrets managers. Um, I think a common open source one is called like external secrets or something like that, which has connectors to a bunch of different secret stores. Essentially what that would do would create a Kubernetes secret. That
Yep.
Kubernetes secret would then need to be made available to the actions pod. The actions pod is what's actually running this ingestion. And so you would edit the Helm chart basically to point it to a reference to your secret that's been provided by your secret manager, if that makes sense. I think that if you're talking to somebody who is, manages your Kubernetes clusters, they can definitely help you like what should go
Yep.
in that Helm chart values. In fact, they're probably reviewing that Helm chart values anyway. Just so things are configured correctly for your specific Kubernetes cluster, in that regard.
Thank you. That's helpful. Just more broader question to start with. So appreciate
Yeah.
if you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to emphasize from what David said is the DataHub Actions pod in your however you're running it is going to need access to those secrets in some fashion. Yeah. Great question. Let me just check the channel. Barring new questions, let's talk a bit about Kubernetes. As let's say hypothetically, we've gotten our ingestions going. We like what we see. We're seeing lineage tied together. We're ready to make our first non-prod environment in AWS. David, would you mind maybe walking me through that? Maybe fresh eyes, haven't ever done this before. I'm going to go into the AWS docs, right?
Sure. So just to be aware that running Kubernetes in a cloud environment is a complex undertaking. Not recommended for a novice. So hopefully you either you have that knowledge already, or you have a partner in crime in order to, make this, production deployment. So when you start to think about production, you have to think about things like reliability, performance, backups, and things like that. And so a lot of these, a lot of existing production environments will have solutions for all of these things. And so, like for example, the data store, the primary data store, whether that is Postgres or SQL or something like that, it's like, is that database being backed up in the case of a failure? Are you going to use something that's a database that is provided by your cloud provider? Or are you maybe running your own clusters because you don't want to rely on RDS or something like that from AWS? A lot of these kind of questions, if you have an existing production environment, they're gonna have answers or preferred paths, right? So you want to follow the happy path for your production environment and really just kind of configure DataHub in order to work with what's the path of least resistance for you. But the primary data stores, which was mentioned earlier, is going to be some sort of a SQL storage. So typically MySQL or Postgres provided in AWS from RDS. Some instance of Kafka. So for AWS, that's MSK, which is listed there on the side. And then some form of Elasticsearch. And so those are the first things, like the fundamental pieces of the data storage layer. That's generally the hardest part or the harder part, just to have that infrastructure set up and available for you to use. The fallback is always kind of running these data stores within Kubernetes, but then you have to deal with things like managing persistent volumes within your Kubernetes stack, and that may or may not be something that your production team wants to support. In some cases, persistent volumes are kind of frowned upon from like being a durable layer within Kubernetes. Can it be done? Absolutely. But generally, you're relying on sort of cloud storage or cloud architect, whatever the data stores are for your cloud environment. All right. So so once you have that kind of nailed down, then you have to start thinking about, okay, now I need to configure DataHub to point to these various things. And in a Helm chart, you typically end up going through a values file, which is a comprehensive list of tons and tons of configuration options, if you will.
Okay.
So this document starts with like you're going to be the one deploying all this infrastructure to your production environment in a very simplistic way. But for most larger companies, they already have this stuff set up. They have teams to manage it, and it's really about working with that team and filling out the values, how to configure it for these things. And so we have a separate repository with our Helm chart in it, and we have a values.yaml file, which looks like what you're looking at on the screen. And essentially, there is a section for each major component of DataHub. So we're looking at like line 3 there, which is the GMS component. But there are also a global section. The global section is going to contain things like references to your data stores because multiple components within DataHub might need to talk to that data store. So those kind of common configuration options for storage are going to be in that global section, which is further down the values.
Yeah. So notably, we're seeing resource limits all throughout here, right? And as we maybe need to scale and further operationalize, those would be some of the potential knobs that either us or our platform or infrastructure teams managing Kubernetes in our environment would be looking at to say, we might see slow ingestion or slow UI performance, and there may be tweaks around the resource management after we're up and running.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the defaults here are going to be set up for a relatively small, minimal environment, just to be cost effective, especially when you're rolling something out. You don't necessarily want to give it all the resources and incur that operational cost right away, unless you need to. The defaults out of the box, like you should be able to very easily handle, hundreds of thousands of data sets or other assets like charts and dashboards and things like that without a problem. When you start to get into probably around, say, 1 million or 2 million, that's really when you're going to start to have to think about scaling out resources. And one of the first places that's probably going to hit you is like in search performance. For example, you might experience slow search performance. Another thing is if you're ingesting a lot of information at once, you might need to increase the resources of the actions pod. Memory typically is what needs to be increased on that. The other thing that can be done to improve ingestion speed is the GMS kind of is like an all-in-one kind of thing out of the box. However, if you want to have high throughput ingestion, you can actually say, okay, GMS is just going to serve the UI for the most part, and we're going to have these other consumers that are actually going to do the ingestion piece, running in separate pods. And so this is kind of just like separating that heavy ingestion traffic into a separate place. So the standalone consumers, that's what that setting is for. It'll spin up additional pods, which you don't see in Quick Start, but that basically just pulls that load off of GMS to make sure the UI remains responsive. And you can also ingest like, tons and tons of data, tons and tons of metadata, right, into the system.
HJ, you had a question? HJ was, so I see your question
hello.
around.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I see your question around Snowflake. Is this
Yes, so I was mostly asking about the Snowflake. We recently implemented the Snowflake and DBT lineage. We do see some redundant data as well. I don't know why we're seeing like redundant data for both Snowflake and DBT. And also I was mostly wanting to know for the visualization, like we can see the lineage diagram, but we can't see the queries that's being used to generate those diagrams. Like, if you right click, if you can see the SQL query itself. We see queries under the queries section, but those seems like the latest updated queries that are ran from the environments, but not from the lineage diagram. So I was wondering if that's something that's going to be supported in the near future or on the roadmap or something.
Harshal?
Yeah, so this is something that we have like a upgraded or revamped UI as part of Aqua Cloud, and we do actually support this capability of like viewing the actual queries that generated each lineage edge in the UI as part of that. But it's not available with open source DataHub at the moment.
Gotcha.
Is there a programmatic way to see these things, perhaps, Harshal, through the API?
Yes. Like basically the edges will have a query earn. And then if you go and resolve that query earn, you'll be able to see the lineage for it. So yes, like you can kind of see it via APIs. But it's, it's a little bit, it's a few extra steps.
So what are the extra steps?
Probably start with GraphQL API, right?
Yeah, the GraphQL API.
The GraphQL API. And then we would look for, in a given data set, what would be, against a data set, what would we'd be looking for?
Yeah, so in the edge, there will be, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the GraphQL tutorial.
Right.
But the lineage edges in GraphQL will have like a query earn associated with them. And then you would need to do a second like get request to view or to actually get the contents of that query.
It'd be under objects, Jeff, if you're trying to go to the
thank
reference.
you.
Yeah. So there should be like an edge in here or some object in here or something.
Search for edge. Let's see. No. What's going on here? No. Okay. So it'd be under like data set as one piece, right?
Data set should include it.
Let's see.
There's going to be a lot of data set. So you'll probably want to scroll on the right side will be faster.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay, cool. So core data set here, right? And then I would want a query around the lineage edges, right?
You're talking about relationships, right, Harshal? Is the
Yeah.
So
I think there will be a lineage thing.
Yeah.
So is there a graph in myself having not worked as much in this area of GraphQL? Is there a way for me to run a GraphQL query that says give me all aspects from this entity? Just get like a quick dump of information.
With GraphQL, like the paradigm is you kind of ask explicitly for what you want, and it will only return that. There's no like dump everything facility.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's just kind of how GraphQL works. But yeah, within that lineage field, there will be like some nested fields. There will be a list of edges. Within each edge in that list, there'll be a queries or a query earn. And so that's where you'd find it if you want to find that information.
Cool. Is that
So we
maybe a
can
start?
do on the yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit confused. Is this something, so we already have the lineage, but we don't have the queries. So is this something you'll call to get that? The queries?
Yeah, so this is something that like is fairly new. We don't surface it in the UI right now. And so what we're talking about here is, you can access the information through the API, but the short answer is no, you can't see it through the UI right now, unless you're with Acro Cloud.
And which cloud version supports that?
The cloud versions are a little different, but I think since like Acro release 0.30, we'll have that functionality.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, if you'd like to DM me, I'm happy to kind of go through differences between open source and the cloud managed service and other information that might be relevant there for you. All right, we're approaching the top of the hour, so I think it's Swagbox time. And so I am going to let David pick the Swagbox winner, who has answered most of the questions.
Do we have a process for this? I don't.
I know. Well, yeah, doesn't seem fair. Okay.
I've never picked a winner. I don't know.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I personally, I appreciate getting an opportunity to run through the basics of DataHub. So I think as a welcome to the community, I'd love to extend it to I think Susan. You've been sitting on the call for a while. Have you gotten a Swagbox yet today?
I have not. So thank you. That's awesome.
You're getting one today. Okay. What you're going to want to do is reach out to Miko Yuck in Community Slack and let her know you've won. And just put that out in the group chat. And then I'm going to unshare because I have to put that in a spreadsheet. One final question. What challenges are we facing here?
I think so. The quick start's really helpful. And then it was helpful to see what to do after the quick start. Is there any other tutorials that you guys can kind of showcase or give us like links to so we kind of know where we can practice some more on just ingesting and all, like just getting used to DataHub?
I have a Loom that I can put out there that I did around a Loom instructional video around the basic ingestions. And I'll pull that up here. And yeah, actually, these are both pretty good. The first one I'll put out. So getting started with Quick Start. You can put these in the community Slack channel, DataHub Marathon QA. And then ingestion basics. Here we go. And yeah, the first one should walk through a bit of what we did in Quick Start, and then I did simple ingestion there in the second one. So hopefully that helps. Glad to hear the session helped, Susan, and Nate. Appreciate your questions as well.
Yeah, appreciate all your time.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see. We're seeing Bren look for. Okay. Yeah, and I mean a bit of guidance is once you get the go into the UI, do the ingestion, refer to the doc. Usually they're started with a simple form, and then if you kind of look at the doc a bit, you'll see there's a lot of features kind of packed into these ingestions. Notably, what you're likely to need to do or want to do is, for one, there's probably sets of tables or assets that you don't want to ingest. So you're going to want to look at how to allow and deny patterns of tables. So it lets you put in regular expressions to say, if it's in this schema or in this database, I don't want to load it, or I only want to allow things from the schema or database, or I don't want tables with the word _test in them, or things like that will give you the means to kind of omit those kinds of assets. And so that'd be a place to look for sure as you're getting started with ingestions. As once you get kind of comfortable with ingestions, kind of in my role, I look at a lot of implementations where the initial technical ingestion is done. The lineage might look good, but it needs to mean something to the business. So one good mechanism to get started there is to do domain assignment using what's called a transformer. So you can add within, I'll share that real quick, and we can make that our last topic before we switch to the next hour. And here in our docs, under integrations overview, we go here to transformers, and these are little snippets such as, I think I want to, as you're getting started, you may only have one, like you may want to have a default owner, basically, to say I'm the owner of the data platform. So I want to add these little snippets in this, you know how we looked at the YAML in our Snowflake ingestion? Add one of these in, and I can say that Susan is now default owner, or this group of people are the default owner of these assets, and like they're of this ownership type. But then also I don't want that to override anything. So I want to say replace existing should be false, and I believe that's the default. Then also, I think that's all you should really be concerned with at this point. But I encourage you to look into these transformers. I think they can really help you with this initial automation goal that many are looking to do, where they want to automate and bring assets in with some degree of enrichment upon when they're ingested. So it's domains and ownership being the first two places I'd really look.
Thank you. That's really helpful of getting started, or like where to go next with getting started.
Welcome. All right, and welcome back, Maggie. And I will hand it back over to you, and I will make you co-host before I drop.
All right, and don't end the meeting, just leave the meeting.
Leave the meeting.
Please.
Interesting.
Well, you can stay, just don't end it.
Yeah. Okay. I have to hit the end button, right? I just don't say end meeting.
Yeah, it goes end, and then you'll have the option to end or leave. And then when you leave
right.
you can reassign it to me.
But that button is red, and my brain says click the red button. Okay.
I know. All
right. Thanks all. Have a good day. Bye.
All right, folks, we are in hour number 5. I don't know. 4.
Yeah.
This is our 5th session. There we go. Got it. We got there.
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon to everybody's here. Looks like we have some folks that are still sticking around. That's awesome. So we're moving into ingestion. So let me pull up our Slack channel and see if we have any. Are there any questions that are still lingering from the last session?
I don't think so. We just kind of gone over some getting started stuff. And there were a couple of questions from HJ, but I think those got covered.
Amazing. All right. Oh, and I'm so glad to see that Jeff shared those loons. That's wonderful. Okay. All right. So we will move things over to our ingestion session. Ryan, thanks for hanging out with us. I think you're out of here. Is that right?
Yep, I'm out of here. But yep.
All righty.
Good talking with
We'll
y'all.
see you, Ryan. Herschel, Andrew, do you want to give a quick intro? Tell the audience who you are.
I can go
Herschel,
first.
you go first.
Yeah. Hello, all. I'm Herschel. I'm a founding engineer here at Acrel. I work on all things integrations. And so, looking forward to hearing what folks are running into, figuring, unblocking and like figuring out or debugging those things, and also, talking a little bit higher level about how we think about integrations and unlocking value with DataHub.
Hi, and I'm Andrew. I've been doing more front-end stuff recently, but still have a decent background of Acrel's ingestion system, so hopefully can help out in either area today.
Alrighty. And for those of you who I've not met, I'm Maggie. I'm the founding community product manager for DataHub. I'm just here to make sure we have a good time, or try to help us have a good time. I don't know, whatever. All right, so I know that in an earlier session, I can't honestly, things are kind of blurring together at this point. I know there were some questions earlier around ingestion, I think on LookML, but I don't remember. I think that person has left. So yeah, if you all have questions for us related to ingestion, or otherwise we can kind of bounce around if we need to. We are using the DataHub Marathon QA channel in Slack. I'm going to post this in our chat. So if you have questions, if you could post it in that channel, it'll just make it easier for us to share snippets, follow up after the fact if need be, etc. Josh, do you have a question? Let's hear it.
Hi. So we are scratching our heads. So Basanta, who's on my team, has developed a really awesome ingestion strategy on the CLI, right? So he's able to basically replicate the UI ingestion. So like he'll generate the ingestion recipe and all that stuff, right? And so what we're issuing to DataHub is the exact same LookML ingestion recipe. But when we run the ingestion on the CLI, we lose all of our lineage between Looker dashboards and DBT and Snowflake and all that stuff, right? And Looker. When I run that exact same lineage, that exact same ingestion recipe on the UI, it's there, it comes back. And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We've looked at the logs, we don't see anything weird like being deleted or anything like that. And I get it, you have to, pull out more logs and stuff to try to figure it out, but it's just so odd that that's happening. And it's only happening for Looker.
Yeah, that sounds strange. Definitely have not heard that one before. I think broadly, the UI powered ingestion and CLI powered ingestion are very, very similar. Like there's not a ton of differences between them, and so you can kind of chat through what those are and maybe generate some hypotheses for what the difference could be. I think the first, I kind of assume you did this, but I'll say it anyway, is just checking the versions of the CLI.
Yep.
I think UI ingestion has like a default default version that's tied to the DataHub version. Whereas if you just did a pip install, it's easy to get something that's slightly newer or slightly older. So the logs will actually have the version number in there. And so you can just kind of compare between the two.
Got it. You know what? I didn't check the CLI version of, so yeah. I thought you were talking about like something. Okay, so let me check that.
Yeah, in particular, I know Looker, or actually this is LookML, not Looker, but Looker did make a breaking change to their API recently. So there might be like older versions of the CLI may actually have issues with Looker, but actually for LookML, I don't think that one is going to be relevant.
Yeah, and are you referring to the I actually posted on Slack about the upcoming Looker authentication changes that were coming through regarding do you know what that is? Here, let me search my Slack.
Let me I don't remember exactly what the breaking change was. I think it was related to query ID.
Yes.
API.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that one's fixed as of 3 weeks ago. So CLI is released after.
And
since then.
Check out the Looker plugin version as well in the CLI. What version you have installed?
Let me figure out exactly what version. So definitely 0.13.0 is going to have the fix for that Looker breaking change. There's some RC releases that will also have it, but 0.13.0 is the newest, or is the version of the CLI that has that fix.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's this Looker query ID API patch.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and just for completeness here, I'll just post the link to this is the PR that fixed it.
So then there was an issue with DataHub and that new patch, right? That was addressed here.
Yeah, that was addressed here. But
would that be relevant on the LookML side? No, right?
No, I think in your particular case, you're running LookML and you're seeing missing lineage between presumably views and like BigQuery or Snowflake or whatever system you have upstream.
Yep.
That one would not be impacted by this patch. Okay. So I think it is something else. Okay. So we can check the CLI versions. I think is maybe the next step here.
Okay, perfect. I will get back to you. That's a good one. I don't know why I didn't even think about that one.
All right. So yeah, get back to us. Let us know what that looks like. And then Deb, it sounds like you have a question as well. Thanks for joining. I'm glad we were able to make that work. So if there's any threads, I know that you've had a handful of questions in Slack over the past few days, I think. Mm-hmm. So if there's any like specific threads that we can reference, if you can post it in the DataHub Marathon QA channel, it just makes it really easy for us to kind of track all of the things. But wherever you want to take things, we're here for you.
Sure, I will post the thread in the QA channel. I just joined it, so I will do that. But I would like to explain. So, hi, I'm Dave, and we have adopted DataHub. It has not been a month. We are still in implementation phase, and to be honest, we are in V0 phase where we are just doing it from the scratch. So one of the issues. So just a background, our DataHub is installed into our Kubernetes cluster, and all the services are running in it. The only change is that we have the backend database as an RDS instance instead of the MySQL Server service that runs. So that is a infrastructure setup that we have. So right now we have Snowflake for which we are trying to ingest the data. So initially, when I started ingesting the data, I gave the entire Snowflake, all the database without any filters or anything as such. It was trying to ingest all the databases that we had. And I started to see error on the DataHub action logs, which says that it was running out of memory. I tried to bump up the memory like 10 gigs around it, but still I was getting the same error. So I tweaked it a little bit. Instead of going all the databases at a go, I was splitting it into just take one database and try to ingest the metadata of that particular database. So it was running fine. However, I mean, as soon as I started adding other services into it, there are a couple of issues I was running into. One such issue, which is giving me some hard time right now, is every time the ingestion runs in the background, one of the issue I see in the UI, it becomes completely unresponsive. Like I don't get the page, I don't get all the CSS comes before me in proper way, and I intermittently start getting the errors over there. And when I look into the errors, I see that on the DataHub action side, it says that read timeout error from the GMS service. When I look into the GMS service, I started seeing the error as that it is not able to get a response back from localhost :8080. So I thought maybe I have to make certain changes. And if you look into my thread, I changed the sync destination, the DataHub REST destination as the Kubernetes endpoint, like DataHub GMS : the pod name, and then local.service, and then the port. But still, I am seeing the same error. And another thing is that if sometimes the ingestion runs, it keeps on running. Like it doesn't take more than 30 minutes to complete an ingestion for one of the database. But sometimes I see that next day when I log in, I could still see it is running, but it's not producing any logs at the backend. So I have to navigate through all the logs and see what are the settings. So I had initial thought that maybe the way the service, the GMS service, it needs some memory intensive or the CPU intensive. So I was wondering what would be one of my question was that what is the recommended settings for the configuration to set up this service? And the second one was related, like this is kind of a blocker for me, like it's not ingesting any record to the completion. And I could see every time there are some zombie process which says that it's running, but it's not running actually anything. So that's my concern and the bottleneck which I'm facing right now.
Yeah, so I'm curious on everyone else's opinions, but it sounds to me like a backend scaling issue. I don't remember the exact settings on the best way to scale the backend, but I know it would be helpful to have separate MCE, MAE, I believe, consumers. Those are the ones that are processing the ingestion events, and they can get backlogged. And then if it's taking too many events, it depends on what type of ingestion you have, but it might take like hours for it to get through all of them, or it may just not accept some of the events that are coming from ingestion. So that would be the first step. Harshal, do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think that's the big one. I think it is a little bit tricky because like it's not fully clear to me if the bottleneck is the GMS backend service or if it's like MySQL or Elastic, like the services that it relies on. So like seeing the logs from GMS might be helpful there to kind of figure out which one is actually the bottleneck, so we can give that one more resources. And then the splitting out the MAE and MCE consumers, like what we call standalone consumers, would probably help as well. And then once those are split out, you can also scale those.
So you're suggesting in the default Helm values.yaml, I have to also enable the MAE and the MC consumer as well. So that takes part in the ingestion process as well.
Yeah. So basically, like by default, I think GMS bundles those two other services and just kind of runs everything. But as you scale your deployment, you kind of see like, oh, we need more juice on this thing, and you want GMS to kind of mainly be responsible for just processing UI requests and keeping that front end responsive, and so you can split these two out so like things remain responsive, and then you can scale. MA and MC consumers are basically Kafka consumers that then make mutations to our underlying data stores. And so you can decouple like the ingestion processing from the rest of the UI.
Got it. So got it. So also I wanted to be clear on one more item that right now the sync we are using the DataHub REST. So there are not any items which we are sending it over the Kafka channel to be consumed. It's mostly the REST endpoint which we are trying to send the response to, the metadata items to. So that is what is sometimes I'm seeing is not scaling properly and it's not working. So I can try out my hands out on the MC and AMI consumers as well. And apart from that, with Snowflake ingestion, there was one more error that I could see from the logs, and this is for the version 0.12. Which is like from the logs, it says that it tries to create a temp table into the schema, but it's not able to do so because it doesn't provide the full authenticated name like database.schema name.the table name. So that is another error. I don't know whether that contributes to the retries and the failure of it or not, but there are some errors I could see which also spawns in that fashion.
Interesting. I need to double check. I feel like we fixed an error. Presumably so we create temp tables during profiling in particular. I think we fixed an issue around that recently, but I can't remember if it was for Snowflake or for some other system. So I need to double check. But in any case, that is not going to contribute to. It's going to make your ingestion a little bit slower, but it's not going to contribute to the memory usage of the ingestion.
I hear you. All right, cool. Thanks for your time. I would put out my question and this stuff in the Marathon QA channel as well, and we'll take it from there. I might have some question to set up the MC and ME properly, but which I would follow up separately on the channel. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
I'm talking on mute. Deb, I encourage you to take a look. Josh and Ren had a couple of suggestions in the Zoom chat as well. So definitely suggest taking a look at those.
Sure. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I missed those stuff up.
Yeah. Look at that. Community helping community. Love to see it. All right. Oh, let me get caught up here. Josh, did you take a look at your CLI version?
Yes, it's 2 versions. One, my CLI is 12.1.1, and the UI is 12.1.4. I'm sorry, CLI is 12.1.1. Did I just say that? And
yes,
and the UI is 12.1.1. So I'm gonna go back on the CLI to 12.1.1 and see if that fixes it.
I mean, Herschel, can we just see if we have any changes around that around that version related to LookML?
That's what I'm looking at right now. We had one last month related to parsing complex manifests. But I don't think that would have impacted this at all. And then other than that, there haven't been major changes in 3 months, it looks like.
Joshua, was it the newer version or the older version that was working properly?
So the UI ingestion run, here, let me close this. So the UI ingestion run was working, right? Which is 12.1.1. The CLI, according to these logs I'm looking at, is not, and that's 12.1.4. So literally, like the weird thing, Andrew, is like I'll see my lineage there when I ingest it from the UI, right? 12.1.1. I kick off that bash script and it just goes away.
Harshal, do you know if we have any sort of incremental lineage calculation or for Looker, especially one that involves the
it
graph?
doesn't do patch lineage because Looker owns the entities.
No, I mean like a fake patch where we like pull the entity's lineage and then try to combine it.
I don't think we do that.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but that would be my like first guess is you have a database or DataHub graph on the UI, but not on CLI.
You guys are running with the REST sync in the CLI as well, right?
Oh,
REST sync? I don't know. What does that mean?
Like in the recipe, when you run it from the CLI, it has like source, looker, and then it says sync, DataHub REST.
Oh yeah, I believe so. Let me double check.
Okay.
Second. Let me look at the YAML. So I see type config, GitHub project name, API. I don't see a sync on the recipe on the YAML.
Yeah, by default, it will use the DataHub REST sync.
For the UI.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
The UI, right.
And in the CLI, I think, if you have your DataHub env set up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have another one. It's not related to ingestion while we look at that. So this is kind of a problem that I'm trying to figure out. By the way, we're already in production and it's awesome. People love this tool. Like I was testing with some guy from pharmacy and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to test out the authentication and all that stuff, right? But he saw it and he was just like, his mind was blown at how much data, metadata, right? DataHub is exposing. It's the best experience. Anyways, this is my other question here. We have a need to add and I can even show you a picture of it. Here, let me just pull up Dev and I'll show you real quick. DataHub, Dev. Let me just make sure that it's shareable. It's hard for me to type and talk at the same time, so I'm only going to do it.
I feel ya. I feel ya.
Okay. This is okay. This is fine. Let me share. Okay. So here is we have a need, right, for adding a JPEG of a dashboard, right, to an asset. That's going to be part of our overall governance strategy of saying, okay, here is SCMG80 Pulse, right? And this is the picture, this is a screenshot of your dashboard, right? So I was able to add this because I'm out talking to the internet, right? But I don't want to do this, right, in production. So this is where my mind is going as far as being able to get the DataHub front end to link to an image that I store within our network. And I'm thinking, okay, we've got elastic file system already. That's the persistence layer of, or the storage layer for our DataHub pods, right? So I'm just thinking, add an annotation to our DataHub front end pod to point to a persistent volume claim on EFS. That's going to be like dev/images/whatever, right? And then and I can just upload all of our images, like our JPEGs, to that location. And then I would expect for that link to just work. And I don't know, I basically just went out and Googled a copy, a Mona Lisa image, and it works here. So I'm thinking that would work. Does that sound reasonable? Does that sound like I'm on the right track?
I'm pretty sure you can put any image that's accessible on the internet in the documentation, and it'll render it as long as it can reach that web page.
Right. And I'm thinking that the internet in this context is going to be my elastic file system, which my DataHub front-end pod is now going to be aware of, because I'm deploying that pod with a pointer to that directory, right?
I think it's based on your browser, not based on the DataHub.
I think if I understood what you were saying, Josh, you were going to add a route to the DataHub front end that instead of serving, the React assets or API requests, it's just like some static route that says, okay, request to this like /dev/images, serve them by reading static files from this, I think, bucket or whatever it is. Like make some API calls.
Yeah, and I didn't know that was called a route, and I don't know if I'm getting into React territory now, or
this is routes on. It's very confusing. The DataHub front end is the Java service that I was referring to. That one has routes. The React front end also has routes. Those are unrelated, I think, right now. I think it would work. It is like a little bit more annoying because now you have to kind of make some tweaks to the DataHub front end service, rebuild it, and then have it like serve images from, your volume.
Right, which right now I'm in the process of downloading the newly released Helm charts that were released like 3 days ago, right? And just in my front end pod YAML, just add that that location in EFS, and I don't know, because the other thing that I was thinking, which is going to be a no-go, absolutely, right? I could base 64 encode this image, right? And then just add it, and it would, but I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to totally bloat the UI service, the front end, and it's just going to become unusable after like the 100th image.
I think it depends on how big the images are. Like the absolute file size matters here. If it's like 100 kilobytes, base 64 encoded, it's probably okay to just encode them and stick them directly in here. If we start getting into the megabyte territory, might need to think about it. It could probably work. But we just need to do some testing there. But yeah, encoding it like that or uploading it somewhere else that has like a public URL that you don't need to make routing tweaks to would probably be a little bit easier. The one other thing, if you we also have the ability to embed like iframes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need it to be PNGs or it's just like an iframe kind of gets the job done. But doing that like embed of an iframe might actually be nice.
I was going to ask, so Josh, is it that you want, is there a reason that you want to explicitly use as like a static PNG? Because I'm guessing like it's for, you know, for Looker, you want to say like, here's your dash, like this is what it looks like, right? Or like, here's what's in it. Is that the use case?
Right.
Or does it need to be static?
So I want it to be a static PNG because those already exist in the org for other use cases, right? So there's already been an effort made by others out in the org to say, hey, here's your data card for said dashboard, so-and-so dashboard, right? And by the way, this is what it looks like. This is just, you know, it's obviously not going to get you 100% where you need to be, but it shows you, oh, this is showing me patient length of stay by month or whatever, right? So it already gives you like that initial validation of, oh, this is where I need access to this, right?
Okay. So
then,
have you all looked at embed, like actually using, so and I know this is like a live instance for you, so I wouldn't recommend sharing your screen and actually showing it, but have you tested out looking at like that preview tab?
Yes. So the preview tab will take you to that Looker asset, right? Or to that Tableau asset. Right? And that's great, but not everybody is going to be able to just open that up, right? Because like I may go into HR data and I don't have access to that, right? So it would be part of our governance framework to say, hey, this is a reasonable image to display, right? Just to give users the feel for what this asset is all about, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And I don't know if other orgs have done this. Other folks have said, hey, well, let me use this documentation tab, which is awesome, by the way, but I'm going to use that to provide a visual reference to my end users.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard that one before. I think generally what we've seen is people use the embed and just iframe in it directly. I think this, you know, you're right that there's like somewhere in between just access to metadata, but no access to, you know, look at it. And I already have access to it in Looker. And so I can see the preview. There's like this intermediate where, you know, here's a quick snippet of what it would show you. You can decide now. I mean, it makes sense. I don't think we've seen that before. But yeah, I think bottom line here is that I'd recommend, if the images are small, base64 encoding them and just kind of stuffing them directly in. It's just going to be like the fastest path forward.
And it's totally right? Like I can see that happen just automatically almost.
Yeah. And then if it turns out that you do need the images to be hosted externally, you know, you can adding a route to the front end would work. If there's existing services that can serve like an HTTP server off of like a bucket or something like that, it might be easier to set one of those up and then just link to those directly. So I think it might depend a little bit.
So that's another thing, right? That came up, like, okay, using a bucket versus just throwing it straight into EFS. What am I gaining one way or the? Is it just configuration simplicity going with a bucket or EFS?
I don't think it makes much of a difference. Like I think a bucket, or a file system that you can just mount on is probably like a little bit easier to interact with programmatically because it's just a file system.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it makes much of a difference. Like from DataHub's perspective, as long as we can link to it and a user's browser can go and fetch the image, it doesn't really matter. It's really just like what is easiest for you to manage and set up.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the file store would be more cost effective in storing larger images, right?
Other way around, I think. S3
Oh, really?
as a blob store would be cheaper, and a dedicated volume mount is going to be a little bit more expensive. But like realistically, both of these are going to be very cheap.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm just trying to think of the UX, on day 2, whatever, right? So like, I don't know. I'm thinking with a direct link to a static JPEG, it's just like it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like if I go hog wild and I say, okay, everybody embed these 1,000 images into all parts of DataHub, I don't know, I kind of feel like that's going to come back and bite me eventually.
Mm.
I don't know, even if they're small.
Well, which part do you think will come back and bite you? The like that you're asking people to like go and
like they're gonna
would they what?
The lag, like when they open
the lag.
So, yeah.
I thought you said that they would lie. I'm like, what would they lie about? What are they lying about?
Everybody lies.
Oh my God. What's happening over there, Josh? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard this approach for this. So like, I think, yeah. I agree with you though that if you can just reference a link, that to me seems like the clearest path forward, right? But it's just, I think, kind of that configuration, and making sure that's a reliable connection is going to be the trick there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I see, Faustina in chat, you had a question around ownership types. You want to tell us a little bit about what you have going on?
Yes. So basically, I created a new owner, like an ownership type in DataHub. And I was trying to add that to my DBT ingestion recipe. And so basically, when I was creating my DBT schema YAML file and adding that new ownership type to it, I was hoping that like DataHub would kind of display that along with like the description that I added for that custom ownership type. However, it classified the ownership type as other. So like the custom ownership type name is called delegate owner. And I know that you guys already have one called delegate. I should probably name it something else. But I was just wondering, there is a way to add like custom ownership types to the DBT ingestion recipe. I was thinking that I might need it to give it like a unique, actually let me backtrack. So I assumed that each ownership type would have like a unique ID and that I wasn't using that unique ID in the recipe. But when I was using like GraphQL to kind of get more information on like the ownership type, it just gave me a UUID and not like a particular like unique name, if that makes sense. And so was just curious if there's a way to add custom ownership type to recipes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just quick clarifying questions. So you created a custom ownership type through probably the UI or using the CLI. Okay.
Using the UI.
All right. And then you're using like DBT meta mappings to kind of extract those ownership types.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, and do you know what version of the CLI you're using?
It's, I believe, 10.5. I know we're using like one
Okay.
of like older versions. We do plan to upgrade, but we're waiting for like the latest version to be out before we did the upgrade.
Okay. Well, I think version was released a couple days ago, so I would recommend upgrading.
Okay, perfect.
We added support for custom ownership types in DBT on the 1st of December. I can link the PR that adds it.
Okay.
This is the PR that added it. And it's basically, previously used to say owner, just like data owner in all caps, and would resolve the enum. If you put in like the custom ownership type, it will just be like, earnly owner type something. If you just put that directly in your YAML and you're using the newest versions, it will pull those in correctly as well.
Okay. All right. So the issue is just I'm using like the oldest version that doesn't support it, basically.
I believe so, yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
That's good news. That seems
I
easy
know.
enough, right? Yeah, we just released V013. I think it was on Friday. I'm actually working on the release notes as we speak, but the release is, and I'll be sending out an announcement in Slack, and we'll have some other comments around it as well. But the release is available. I will say it is a very large release. There is a lot happening in it. So yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on how that kind of cutover goes, or that upgrade goes for folks. You said you're on version 10 something, right?
Yes, 10.5, I believe it is.
10.5.
So that's like a huge jump.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I might need to just like do like small little incremental upgrades.
Yeah. What I'd recommend, so we have let's see here. We have a doc called updating or upgrading DataHub. I can't remember which it is, where we have breaking changes, or just kind of like notable changes that happened in a given release. And so I definitely think, hold on, let me see where this is. Hey, Herschel, I've been noticing that I think we need to rerun our index on our doc site, because I'm getting.
Yep, I know. I was looking at it today morning before I hopped on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's because like a lot of new pages have been added to the docs recently.
Yeah.
And the index flagged it and paused the pipeline because too many things changed. And normally that's a bad thing.
They got to keep up with us.
Well, I mean, it's actually a very reasonable thing. Like, if
I know
40% of your docs change, well, probably something wrong with the configuration and not.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Maggie, if you go to the next docs, those were working a lot better for me.
Yeah. Okay. Where is this?
Are you looking for the updating docs?
Yeah, where is that under? Thanks, Ethan. It's good to see you, man. Oh, it's under release history. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'll just show you, Faustino, quickly what this looks like, and I'll link it out to you as well.
Right.
So let's see here. So we have this doc called Updating DataHub, and basically, which reminds me, we need to update. This needs to be updated here. Anyway, so it'll have
for that, but yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll have like a release by release set of notes of any like deprecations or breaking changes.
Mhm.
So as you're going through this, as you're kind of stepping through things, you know, I think actually stepping through every release since 10.4, whichever you said, probably that's a lot of work. You know, to like do each of those incremental updates, but this is definitely worth a scan to kind of like see what you'd be jumping through, particularly around kind of you know, package upgrade or like package version changes or upgrades there. I know that in V13 we're deprecating support for Python's 2.7, what is it?
3.7.
2.8,
3.7.
3.7.
Yeah.
my how time flies. So anyway, and then kind of toggling up here, this is going to show you, so right now this is going to show you our release notes as of V13, but then if you look at next, this is going to have anything that's also coming up in the next one. So and also the good news is we have some version docs back to like 10.5, 11, etc. So hopefully this is a helpful resource for you.
No, this is very helpful. Thank you so much. I'll definitely
put that in.
Know about this.
Yeah. So there, and I just linked in Zoom chat out to that page for you.
Thank you.
How are things going overall with DataHub?
Honestly, I really like DataHub for sure.
Yeah.
We're definitely using it because right now we built like a new like data source pipeline, and so we had to create like a custom ingestion, and that was like really interesting to like work on for sure. And just seeing like the lineages, I feel like lineages is definitely like my favorite feature about DataHub.
Huge.
It's a huge game changer for sure. But like, I feel like I just still need to get more familiar with DataHub because I feel like there are definitely more features that I'm not 100% familiar with. But other than that, I really enjoy using DataHub for sure.
So you guys built out a custom ingestion source and were able to get lineage extracted out of it automatically?
Yes, because for lineages in particular for that, because the data source we're refreshing the data from was from Snowflake, and so we were able to kind of connect them together, which was really nice and definitely came in handy for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we've made a lot of, I mean, Snowflake is one of the sources that we're, you know, where is like best supported, just because it's so widely adopted, right? Like it's huge. And then Herschel's done a ton of work on a lot of our kind of lineage extraction, particularly on column level lineage. I don't know if you guys have started enabling that or kind of going down that route. But so where for systems, you know, for ingestion sources where column level lineage isn't automatically available from the source itself, we have pretty advanced SQL parsing that Herschel built out. He just like snuck it in there. He just like showed up out of nowhere. It was like, oh, by the way, I can extract 99.9% of column level lineage accurately. Like, what? So yeah, so it's like super advanced there. If column level lineage is something that you haven't implemented yet or need to in other systems, even if it's not officially supported in those those integration sources themselves, we have the additional add-on for that SQL parsing. So super powerful stuff.
Yeah, I'll probably say like one feedback for sure is probably like seeing like more examples in the docs, especially for like GraphQL in particular, because I know like using some of that in some of our code. And so like it was a little bit difficult to kind of see like what else I could do with GraphQL, especially since it was like my first time using it. I know that like look through the Slack channel helped a little bit, but if we can probably have some like more examples in the docs, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Are there that's something where we're like, we love that type of feedback because we're all too close to the code at this point, or like too close to the project to know, you know what I mean? It's like we're just navigating it on a regular basis. So it's hard to kind of have that perspective of what isn't immediately clear. So I'm curious, like, are there kind of specific use cases that you'd like to see for GraphQL? And Deb, I saw that you took +1 as well, so I'd love your opinion there as well. But like, are there specific use cases or kind of areas where you just kind of feel like there's gaps?
So like for instance, so for example, like the ownership types, right? Because I was trying to see, because I know like I could list out like the different ownership types along with like era and the info, all of that. And so like I know like there's a page that talks about ownership types and then lists out like the inputs and all of that. And so like probably like at the bottom of that should be an example as to like how you can use it or how like the GraphQL query would look like if you were to use like shape types. So something like that. Because I know like you guys definitely out like the different like functions and entities for GraphQL. And it just lists out like the parameters and then like obviously like a description for those parameters, but like just seeing like examples of how it can be used and like different use cases would be even better.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen our API guide, or like our let me see here. These nope.
I do know there are some examples, but it's not for like everything. I know it might be too much.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna link out to this just to make sure that you have it. Because we do have guides around you basically kind of like managing assets within DataHub, regardless of regardless of what API you're using. So, for example, the one I just linked to you is kind of our tutorial around creating or deleting data sets using GraphQL or Java or Python SDKs. It's certainly not exhaustive, right? Like we have plenty of more things to do, but just wanted to make sure that you had seen that in there as a resource going forward. But yeah, Dev, I'm curious for your feedback as well. Like what do you think is what's been missing from the either GraphQL guide side of things or kind of otherwise?
Yeah, I think Faustina covered most of the items which even I was looking for. Some kind of sample, not very much provers in the GraphQL. So a bit of example that this is how you form your query statement and how to make use of it. That would be very useful. And it takes a while. I know there are plenty of documentation that I could see over there, but it took me a while to jumpstart on it or start exploring on it. So just something on that front could have been provided.
Amazing. Okay. Herschel and I and our other teammate, Hajan, we meet on a weekly basis to talk about our doc site. And we're definitely starting to ramp up some of our initiatives over there. So I think this is really great feedback for us. All right. Hi, Abhishek. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're looking for when you're talking about similarities for?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, so basically I just started using Acryl and I'm working on a search functionality. And what I'm trying to get is that whether we can get, like in Elasticsearch, whenever you hit a query, you get back a search similarity score with each record that is sent back. That way we can put a hard threshold for low confidence and like prune out the low confidence search results, so that if I look up zebra and there's nothing about zebra in my data like data lake, so it should it shows sometimes results with very low confidence. So this thing helps in pruning those things out. And you guys are using, I think, Elasticsearch under the hood, like so OpenSearch or something like similar. So I think like it should be possible.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I need to look at what is available, like what we expose via our search APIs. I know internally you're exactly right. Like we use Elastic or OpenSearch under the hood. We have a bunch of weights and things like that to generate scores for each entity, and then search just ranks across those. I I'd need to double check if we return those to the UI. If not, I think we have some debug capabilities that I might be able to go and find.
Okay. Right. So this was I have 3 questions. So this was the most critical one because without this, it's hard to go out with a search functionality. So yeah, so this is one. Other 2 are, one is I was going through the filter like documentation, like how filtering works in search. So there I got like I was not able to fully explore it because like if you can share some examples where we are compounding like and or conditions and negation and special conditions, like some examples, if those can be shared, that would be really helpful. And other thing is like this is one request, if some examples on this filtering search filtering can be shared. And the last thing is like this is a full text search, but open search and elastic search, or even I think today I think we should like try to get embedding based search, so that let's say if I have car sales data and someone searches for vehicle sales data, so I think based on our embedding based search, that we can like still the relationship is maintained between car and vehicle. But in our text based search, if the right token is not sent in the search query, it sometimes become difficult. And even if you do enriching, that is again not a proper solution, because embedding based search will be better because inherently it is maintaining those relationships. So these are the 3 things. One was first one was getting a score back. Second was regarding like some examples on filtering, if they can be shared. And third is like your thoughts on like bringing in embedding based search, but like adding is as an option.
Okay. So one, I think we don't expose scores through the GraphQL. We do have some debug endpoints where you can kind of actually see the raw scores. So I need to go and find those, but I can look at that. For the second one, I need to find the exact examples. But I think the best example of how to construct filters. So the filters, first off, we just pass those directly through to Elasticsearch. And so like the Elasticsearch docs are going to have all of the details on how to do fancy negations and different things.
So I've worked with Elasticsearch, but I think what I'm getting wrong is the syntax in GraphQL. I'm not able to maybe like and filter, odd filter. Those things I think there's a problem. That's why examples would do. If you share some examples, I'll be good to go from there.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm interrupting.
No, that was helpful. So our Python code has like some code that constructs a bunch of fancy and clauses or clauses and kind of combines them. Maybe I can send you the link to that, and hopefully you can kind of figure out how it's constructing it and replicate that construction. Does that sound good there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Could I get
And then the last piece is embeddings based search. This is something that we're working on for Acro Cloud. So can't provide any like concrete timelines or anything just yet, but know that it is something we're thinking about.
Okay.
So Abhishek, I added you in our DataHub Marathon QA channel in Slack, where we're kind of logging all of the questions here today, so we can kind of follow up offline. So Herschel, I'm going to tag you in that thread as well to send some follow-up examples.
Right.
And then Abhishek, did you say that you're currently an Acro customer, or are you using open source DataHub?
No, so basically I'm working with Regeneron Pharma, so they are using Acro.
Got it. Okay. So I think if are you in contact with the customer success person on the Acro side, or is that through the Regeneron team exclusively?
So I requested internally the MLOps DevOps guy who's coordinating with Ekril to schedule a
Okay.
call. So luckily, I saw
Okay.
your session going on, so I could not wait.
Totally, yeah, that's great. That's why we're here. So on the embedding side of things, I definitely recommend chatting with your contact at Regeneron, and then get you in touch with the customer success rep, who will be able to speak more in detail or kind of keep you up to date on the Acrel side of anything we build out related to search embeddings.
Hi all. Did I hear Regeneron?
Yes, you did.
That
Are you
context.
working with Regeneron, Jeff? I didn't realize that.
Work with everybody, I guess. Yeah, I
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. I've been helping show them some of the new roadmap and features. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. All right. So, folks, we are at the end of our ingestion session. Jeff is here. We're going to have Chris and I think Anton joining as well. Herschel and Andrew, my request is just if you could just stick around for a couple more minutes. I did before they dropped, I wanted to let Hasina and Deb know that I was going to send them some swag. So I'll follow up with them in DataHub Slack and get that over to them. And then Jeff, I'm going to hand it over to you to wrap up our last troubleshooting session. And then we're going to call this marathon a wrap.
Cool. All right.
Let me make you co-host, and then we'll get that going. All right, folks, for those of you who, well, everyone here, have a wonderful day, everyone. I'm gonna step out, but we'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, Maggie. All right. So, what were we looking at? Let me get the community channel up. Okay. And then
I have a quick question.
Oh, please.
So, Harshal, I'm just trying to see, is there a way to override that CLI without changing the CLI on my jump host? You know, like the way I'm able to, like on the UI ingestion, you're able to say use 12.1.1, even though we may be on 12.1.4.
Yeah. There's no direct way to do it. You can like set up a Python virtual environment and install a different version inside of there or something like that.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I don't know if I were to change the entire CLI version on my jump host, right, what it's going to do to all the other ingestions that are running, right?
When you say jump host, do you have like a central server that everyone kind of connects to and just runs ingestions from? Okay.
Yeah, I like the virtual environment idea a lot.
Yeah.
Then you can
virtual environment.
Like, let's say you wanted to have you probably have to do this, right? Harshal is running 4 versions of the CLI and switching between them. There's probably a means of using some environment variables or some aliases or whatnot, but installing different versions of DataHub CLI into virtual environments and then managing the paths into those and what runs them is probably a good way to go.
So basically, it'll be event create, get my virtual environment set up, and then do a pip install DataHub version 1.1.1, and I'm good to go. And then I can just
and label your vim as being that version, and then you would set an environment variable in aliases or whatever approach you prefer to point to the right one. Yeah, to point and just to point to the right DataHub CLI. Yeah, that'd be what I do as well. What else are you struggling with, or what else can we help you with, Josh?
That's it for now. Harshal gave me some really good pointers on just debugging an issue that we found. So working on that.
Cool. Okay.
Hi, yeah, I actually had an error that I posted in the troubleshoot chat, but I don't think anybody got to me.
Take a look.
I want to raise that here.
You're trying
So
to do, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to integrate SSO and we're using ping to authenticate. And so I talked to the people in our who do that for us and they said everything is, looks good on their side. But I'm getting this error. I posted the error log in the thread. But it's like unsigned token. Da, da, da. So I was wondering if that was something you've seen before or yeah. I guess I'm not really sure what to do.
Okay. This is out of my realm. Andrew?
Give me a bit to look this up. I am not
look.
the SSO expert.
Okay, let me go ahead and pull up the Slack thread.
Yeah, who usually is the best at SSO stuff? Because these questions come up and I also lack SSO expertise.
And for people.
I think John and Asim tend to know it. I think like SSO is one of those things where there's so many different variants. And so every time we think we've seen all the variants, there's more. I think broadly, there's a couple things that happen. Like the first thing to check is, obviously the secrets or the configuration. In particular, there will be like some, URLs and things that are pretty easy to get wrong. And then the second piece is if we can, make the request and we get back data, there'll be like claims and information in the response that we got from SSO. And everyone formats it a little differently. And so we have some regexes and things that you can configure to parse out the information you want. And sometimes those can be tricky to get right. So I haven't looked at the thread in depth yet to understand where the issue is in this case. But broadly, those are kind of my recommendations around SSO.
So maybe a good place to go would be, let's just walk through the docs over basic SSO integration. Make sure that all kind of relevant steps here followed. And maybe we can find maybe where things maybe drifted from where the instructions are working. Does that sound reasonable, Azariah?
Yeah.
Cool. So, so the first piece is getting, like it says, getting details from your identity provider. So ID, secret, and the discovery URL. So this would be in your ping provider of, where you're going to set that up. I think there's some docs that we're not going to go to. The callback URL needs to be your Acrel instance, that URL. And so far, this looks good for you, right? Callback URL exposed to the internet exposed to the provider properly.
Yeah, so actually to give a little bit of context, like so when I go to, my DataHub link, like I'm able to get redirected to ping, I'm able to log in and I get redirected back. So like the discover link works, the callback works. So
yeah.
Yeah, the question is
but the token payload is wrong. Or not working.
It's not working, yeah.
Yeah. So what ping is passing into DataHub? So we have a section of plugins that has Okta and Azure AD, right? over here. Yep, Google, Okta, Azure. So if hypothetically, let's say it's Okta, which is probably a little closer to ping, and how it works. Here's your login, log out. There. Okay. You're kind of through these pieces.
For what it's worth, we had our fair share of single sign-on issues, and I was trying to find a link, but I can't find it to an SSO debugger tool. So basically, what happened is our IAM person was like, "Hey, let's add this endpoint to your IDP, your I think she called it a domain or your realm or something."
Yeah.
And we were able to debug it. But if I find it, I'll post what we did.
That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're really going to need to look at the payload as it's returned from ping. Like you did give a sample screenshot there. But it's come down to what how DataHub's going to interpret that as to why it's getting bounced. So yeah, okay, here, remember this. This is perhaps, it depends on where it's breaking down, but I can see that we do offer like sort of a way to, by default, it would take whatever is provided in that payload as email. So that should, I think if you're looking at the default setup, whatever that email parameter is, you could just select it and see if it's present there. Or can you maybe look on your side? I'm sure you're trying to hide things that are sensitive in that screenshot, but maybe if you see where the email is in that that payload, that might be a good clue. And then if email doesn't look like it maps appropriately, perhaps something has been added or appended, then I think this might be a good place to check out with the to be able to do a regex of some sort against that payload to match up the DataHub version of the user to what's in the claim.
Do you know if you're able to access the provider metadata that for ping, the OpenID provider metadata? I'm just going based on the error message talking about the unsigned ID. And want to see if it's like an issue on our end where we're not allowing unsigned IDs when we should, or if it's an issue with the IDs that are getting sent.
I don't know if I have access to check that, but I can ask our SSO person. So what exactly was the question?
I'm here. I'll put it in chat.
Or I have it up in screen share. I think the error.
Yeah, so that's the error. I want to know the value of this in your OpenID provider metadata.
Yeah, I just responded in the thread too, looking at our history, and I found somebody else that had the same error. And they solved it by setting a specific environment variable that we talk about in our OIDC config documentation. And I guess depending on the provider that you're using, you might need to set this variable to set the signing algorithm for ID tokens. And I think
What should I search for, Chris?
What's that?
I'm on that page.
Oh yeah,
What should
it's
I
called
search for?
auth OIDC preferred JWS algorithm. Yep. So depending on your provider, yeah, so if your IDP includes none before RS256/HS, whatever, unless the signing algorithm, then this value must be set. So I guess we have to set that depending on your IDP.
I see. Okay.
So this might be the problem. I hope so, just because this solved it for 2 other people in our community by setting this to the proper value.
This looks like definitely the next step to me. This is the first thing I would look at next.
Okay, I'll try that out.
It seems to address your use case here. If ping IDP includes none, then which it seems to maybe do that, then says this must be set to work.
Sounds good. Could you send me the thread on the chat or something?
Yeah, I linked the thread of somebody else using this case. Oh, not in that thread, in your DataHub community marathon thread.
Oh, I see.
I thought that's where I was. Oh, did I trace back to the original?
No,
Yeah,
you were on the original.
Sorry.
That's the original. And then Jeff, can you send him that the link to the docs page that you just had as well?
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. See a question from Deepak here. It says, Deepak, do you want to go ahead and introduce your question?
Yeah, sure. So we are from Visa team. So we wanted to discuss, this use case and wanted to, get the thoughts about this from the DataHub team. For example, we want to limit the associations of, glossary terms to only certain types of entities, like that some glossary terms should be applicable to certain data sets or tables, and some should only be applicable to attribute or column level, or we can define the glossary terms which are applicable to only data product level, right? So just want so just wanted to know the thought about this DataHub team about this use case.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard this before. I don't know if other people have heard anything like this. But I'd also be interested more into your use case, why this would be valuable for you. I mean, I could imagine, but what in your guys' organization would make this particularly valuable?
Okay, so sure. So for example, let's say we define a certain like say policies as a glossary terms, and want those policies to be applicable to only data set level. We don't want anybody to apply them also at the column level or attribute level. We just wanted to limit their associations. So that's the use case we have. For example, in structure properties, as DataHub team has introduced, and limit the structure properties to only certain type of entities, right? So similar use case, we want to we have this in terms of glossary terms. We want to limit their associations, what glossary terms can attach to what entity or at what level.
Yeah,
just wanted to know. Yeah,
I could definitely see that. Default, allow it to be on everything, but then you can set a specific. It's essentially just a validator. You just want to make sure that things are consistent with what you would expect. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has any strong feelings one way or another on this team.
It feels like you have. By the way, I had the opportunity to talk with JP at Visa yesterday. I happened to be in the area and we had a coffee and it was nice. So I got to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, which was good for me. So First place I would look is you seem to you're gonna have a class of user that should never touch this stuff, right? A true read-only user that can't touch any of these assets, do anything with glossary terms or anything like that, right? I'm sure you have some audience of users doing that today, right?
Yep, that's true. I'm
And then
Prasamran also from Visa.
And then you have another class of user that should be able to modify glossary terms, right? That should be able to apply glossary terms to assets. And you want to control where it gets applied so that it doesn't accidentally get applied at a column level when it is a data set level construct. Right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's go ahead and look at what we currently support in policies and see what's there. Go into this local open source environment I have.
Yeah. I believe we like limit it for users, like whether or not you can set glossary terms in general or not. And you can like, that's a metadata privilege, so you can apply it to like any subset of assets that you want. But yeah, we have no validation that the glossary term is being applied to the right type of asset at the moment. But yeah, that wouldn't be like too crazy to build out, I would imagine.
Yep.
By any means.
I'm logged in.
Yeah. And I mean, like the thought process that our product team had was essentially that there might be certain glossary term groups where all glossary terms which are a part of those groups can only be applied to, let's say, data sets. For example, retention policies might be a glossary term group where the different categories of retention policies are only applicable to data sets, whereas business term or something analogous to that might be something which is more so applicable only at the field level.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if we do it at the glossary term level directly, I guess that would also probably solve what we are going for. But we wanted to gauge whether there had been any thought around this idea from the community at large.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think I've ever heard this specifically. I would not be surprised if somebody else has brought this up and has heard of this. But yeah, I would say like as far as implementation goes, I think I would focus on the like on the glossary term itself. You can define how this thing is applied, or like, yeah, we'd have to find some way to like do it within a group. But essentially, since we already have that framework set up with structured properties, as you called out, following that path, I think would make most sense. Where that's basically you define the thing like an optional restriction on the glossary to like certain entities that it can be applied to. And then there would have to be a new validator, an aspect validator that would have to be registered. That would then, whenever anytime you're trying to set the glossary terms aspect on any data set or anything like that, doing that logic to make sure that you're not doing anything not allowed. The nice thing too is like we already have that exact flow working for structured properties, and we also generalized it to bring these like custom aspect validators to a general solution. So like anyone can register them without even having to write code. You can just like add a validator. But the thing to make this validator work, the new work that would have to be written into the model would be that like restriction piece on the glossary term itself. So then the validator could use that information to validate whether or not it's doing the thing.
I would wonder if packing your structured properties, this kind of information at runtime to maybe, I think it's helpful. I think it's probably going to be, now, Chris, what is, when can like community users expect to be able to start looking at structured properties? Is
They're
that in
already
13?
available. Yeah,
They're
they're in 13. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
right now,
played
it's
around
not...
with structured properties. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, it's not like a fully finished feature, of course, because right now we still require a YAML file for you to create structured properties. But we obviously want to build that in the UI where you can create and define structured properties as well. And that's one of our follow-ups that we're going to be working on. But anyways, keep going. Sorry.
Chris, if I gave you a few minutes, could you do a structured properties demo after we kind of wrap up here? Love to see.
Potentially. I do not have a good setup right now locally. I'd have to like get myself going. I had to recently nuke everything on my local setups, but I could try to find something.
Yes, we do. I'll check in a few minutes. But yeah, Deepak, I think that's going to be a helpful place to go. I would investigate very thoroughly around overall. You know, you're going to be pretty policy heavy given the nature of your business. So some things that I think are interesting here are making specific policies around tags and domains, probably tags in your case. So if an asset is maybe of a certain type or glossary term, within glossary terms can be tagged. I think behind the scenes, I don't think the GUI actually shows it, but I think there's tags, I think universally supported. That might be a way to filter down what you want a given policy to work, how you want a given policy to work. As far as applying terms only at data set level versus column level, I think that's an interesting problem to continue talking about, though. But these are definitely areas that should be explored for your larger use case. I'm sure you are, but keep going.
Sure. Yeah, we'll definitely explore this.
So in terms of like continuing on down that road, there was a call out earlier on that, hey, we could maybe look at how structured properties implements it and try to borrow it and implement it at our own end for glossary. Do you think there would be support for that in the broader community if we were to attempt to do something along those lines?
Do we think there would be support? What kind of support?
In the sense that, like, just in terms of, hey, would that be a feature that would be received well? Like, if we were to try to contribute that, does that align with how you guys are planning on heading with glossary terms, maybe in your roadmap?
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to support this. I don't think this like breaks any like ideologies that we have around glossary terms. It's not like we like need glossary terms to be, you know, if anything, it makes more sense with glossary terms because glossary terms are like the more structured, more governed. Like we want to be able to apply more rigor around them. While tags are supposed to be the kind of free for all situation, you know.
Exactly. That's where we are coming from as well.
Yeah, so I think that aligns with our philosophy for sure. And if somebody doesn't like it, it can be an opt-in feature, like default works as it currently works, and then you can apply this optional restriction if you want.
Yeah, really. So the restriction would be if a metadata change proposal, if for any reason goes through where a term has been defined as being only applicable at a dataset level, if it's being applied to a field level to return an error, right? To block
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's how it works with structured properties right now. When you say it should only be allowed on data sets, if through an API or something, you try to set it on a data job or whatever, we just raise an error. We don't ingest that data.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And another request from the team is that I think the team knows that we have, raised the PR of, of the business attribute support. So the requesting the team to, give us the feedback on that PR. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit less familiar with the business. I've heard of it.
I've got that on my plate to follow up, and I'm talking through sales and everything about that based on my conversation with JP yesterday. So hope to get you guys some feedback soon. And sorry about the timing.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I'll ping you offline in Slack too. I think there's some next steps we could take. Just you guys and me too. So, but
sure. Definitely.
But please bring. Do you have more questions we could bring to the office hours here? We'd love to hear them.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Check in Slack. Okay. All right. Okay. We're here. Shiva.
Yeah. Hey, morning. Sorry, I can't share the screens too early here. Australia. I have three questions. One is around the Spark version upgrades, support for upgraded Spark version, latest versions of Spark. I know the last or the one before I did raise it, and then they said they were looking at implementing that into the latest version, but not sure whether it still went ahead or not.
Okay. Well, I heard Spark ingestion, so I'm gonna.
So you were saying supporting the newest Spark version?
Yeah, 3.3 and above.
I don't know too much about our Spark ingestion source. But let me look at their docs real quick. I believe that should be supported on the newest version. And hopefully there isn't anything major you have to do. Let me ask.
The second question is around Feast feature store. The integration is fine, but when I'm trying to look at the lineage, because on the back end I'm trying to connect it to the Postgres database and write the features and read the features and all that stuff. So the feature stores not showing me the link going all the way to the Postgres database. I'm just wondering, is there anything feature like that for Feast?
Did you say you were having issues with lineage?
With
Like
Feast
Postgres?
mapping to Postgres. Yeah.
Feast mapping to Postgres.
Yeah.
I am not also familiar with our Feast source. So I would have to
Marshall's
look
here,
into
though.
that.
Yeah.
Marshall, do you know anything about our Feast source?
Not super familiar with it. The fee source is actually a community contribution, I believe. And so, I'm familiar with it broadly. The details you need to double check on.
Yeah.
I guess the issue you were facing was with lineage. It sounded like just things not linking up properly. So generally the first thing to check there is for the thing that you expect to see, for the entity where you expect to see something upstream of it and you don't, get the earn of that entity and run in the CLI like DataHub get against that earn.
Okay.
And then we can kind of see if the issue is that it is extracting an earn, but it's not like matching up with the other entities that you have in your instance, or if we are not extracting any information at all. Because if it's the latter, then it's probably a bug in the feast source. If it's the former, it might be a bug in the feast source. It might be a bug in how the things upstream were ingested so that it doesn't match up. So it just kind of depends a little bit.
Okay. Like on the screen at the moment, you were looking there, right? Like the feast source was there, but then it couldn't find the source, even though the table's there. That's similar issue is what I am facing.
Let's debug it.
Yeah. Sorry for that. You go.
No, yeah, let's take a look. So I will, and I see some hands raised. We'll get to those, but let's just take a minute here. And I mean, Harshal, do you think if we can probably inspect what I have an example feature table here. I should see an upstream lineage aspect of some sort, right? that I can investigate the urn with.
Yeah.
This is a useful exercise. We
This is just a local instance that you're running, right? So you can, if you pull up your terminal, you can,
yeah, I don't need a token, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go DataHub init.
You're only sharing your browser, by the way.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Well, just make sure I don't do anything dumb with my environment file because, okay, good. Okay, let me now share. Okay, and here we go, share. Okay, so here in terminal, I now have ability to say DataHub get earn against this feature table. So I'm going to go here to the share button, copy earn, go back here, get earn -- earn, and then quote it. And ML feature table properties, ML features, ML primary keys, feature table key, feature table properties. So don't have aspect. Let me go here. So this sources here does map so to FCT users created. So Herschel, I need to do -- aspect, right?
It just looks like there is no lineage aspect, right?
Yeah, it probably maps like through like the ML primary key or something like that.
Let's look here. User analytics.
Maybe I need to run a get on the ML feature instead of the feature table or the ML primary keys.
Okay, so so I'd still do aspect, right? ML primary keys?
No, like a DataHub get on the ML feature earn, let's say.
The ML feature here itself, right? So I need the
So the earn was in the output in the terminal.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is my earn that I care about. Okay. Here. So let's get this. Okay. So I'm going to say DataHub get earn -- earn.
Marshall, are you saying we represent lineage based on an aspect that is not upstream lineage or data type input output?
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I think, like lineage, like charts has chart input output. There's like a couple other aspects that are lineage.
Do you know which one it is for ML tables, ML features?
I mean, I think it's this one.
Okay.
Here it is.
ML primary key properties. Okay, then.
Yeah. I'm gonna do this.
Okay, so it's the sources. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we look at the one that didn't have a linked source, probably here it was broken, right? Or this didn't navigate to the right thing. If I look there, that actually says feast.star, which is never going to work. So the earn key doesn't map. If you can see down there, it's highlighted there. That's going to an earn that won't ever work. So that would be what I would look at. Let me copy the command out here as a template for you and put that into our Slack.
Okay.
I'll just put it into Zoom chat here. I did see some other hands, so let me go ahead and make sure that.
Oh, actually, before we move on, Tomash is on here for the Spark question. If you could ask that again.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, yeah. Spark question was around like, is there any plan to support the latest versions of the Spark? I think at the moment we have supported to 3.2, 3.1.2 or something like that. I was reading.
Yeah.
Can you confirm?
Yeah. So basically, I merged a couple of days ago the latest which we call like the beta Spark plugin. I will cut a release pretty soon, and that will support, I think, the latest Spark as well. So you should be able to use with that. And it has a couple of other new features like column level lineage, patch support, and things like this, and even passback support. So I think if you can wait a couple of days, I would wait until we have that official.
Would that come in the 13.1 release?
Yeah, basically.
Cool.
Cool. That's great. Sorry for taking an extra minute there, but does it also support any extra new features about RDDs and all that stuff, which is kind of a missing across all of Spark, not just this one, but
yeah, with the new plugin, we are basically using OpenLineage under the hood, which should support RDD as well.
Great.
Even though we're
Thank you.
providing a bit more feature over that, which is like more so basically our plugin gives you like a more native DataHub support with OpenLineage, actually. With the OpenLineage plugin embedded, basically, or using the OpenLineage plugin.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, hi guys. So basically it goes up to the question I posted on the ingestion channel probably yesterday, if we are looking up. Yeah, ingestion, that's
here.
Right. So what we're trying to do is we are connecting to Looker instance through LookML plugin, and we expect to see the nested LookML views. Sometimes in some cases we provide the base views for LookML, and after that we extend them with extra measures based on the requirements for a specific explorer. So it's like essentially the view which is extended and uses another view. So, and in this case, we don't see them being nested. We just see the last one in a chain. So in this specific example, there is a view called IQ analysis group, which is in fact a nested sequence of 4 LookML views. So it would be great to see like all of them. And it seems like I found a piece of code in your repo to make this happen. It's just I'm not sure, maybe I'm not enabling something.
Got it. So it looks like you're using the extend keyword for the views.
Yes. It's not for the Explorer, it's for the view.
Yeah. So in DataHub, we only represent kind of the final view. And that method that you found called get including extends. The purpose of that is actually it merges across the view and the things the things that it extends. And so we kind of produce a final, like, what does the view look like finally after all of the extends have been applied? And that's the representation that we try to ingest. So it's only that final layer that we represent.
Okay.
So if the view isn't used anywhere explicitly, other than the extend, we won't ingest it.
Okay, got it. Just another rookie question. I saw there's a label for DBT core in ingestions tab for DBT cloud, sorry. Does it mean that DBT core is not supported, or
both are supported, DBT core and DBT cloud.
Okay, both are. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. DBT Cloud obviously is going to have a web accessible API. So ingestion from that is going to be pretty easy in the, you've got your DataHub UI, I want to go in, give me everything from DBT Cloud. When it comes to DBT Core, these files are not, the files that matter are not, should not be necessarily accessible by the internet. So the places that we often see be most useful of running the DBT recipe are going to be either at your build time. So as you say merge to the master or main branch, and you trigger that CI/CD pipeline to actually deploy your DBT models and however they get run from there. That running the DBT recipe, referencing your DBT manifest and catalog files will emit what's there in DBT. Now, the trick is if you're looking for things like integration, we support external assertions coming out of DBT tests. So pretty great integration if you're leveraging that piece of the DBT stack. You would need to have be emitting the sources file and run results files to get the full capabilities of that integration. And so since that's more of a runtime thing, then you would need to structure it in a way where you're running it out of maybe like your Airflow or what have you there.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Or the answer is kind of both, maybe. Like at build time and merge CI/CD time, it's like run the recipe once and then continuously refresh it with these results as you run your workflows. Be a good way to go.
That's great. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, let's check the chat. I had Hira Jawed. Would you like to speak to your question? It's a good one. So
do we know who's sharing their screen right now? Is that you,
it's mine.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't Alex. So okay.
Yep. Nope. That's me. So the question is, hello, we have DBT and Snowflake lineage. How can I differentiate between the two lineage? I keep seeing them together if enabled. Is there a way that I can filter down DBT lineage versus Snowflake lineage? Harshal, I'll just go ahead and pass that one over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I think generally we kind of merge the two because this is, how people think about DBT in conjunction with, say, Snowflake. They don't think about them really as two separate things. They kind of are similar. At the same time, I get why there's some cases where you want to kind of dive in deeply. And so in the UI, Jeff, if you could go to like demo.datahub project,
yeah,
that probably has it.
Over here, yeah.
There's like a toggle called compress lineage, and you can turn that off, and that will help you kind of see all the individual pieces of lineage. Yep, so that compress lineage, and then you can see. Now the thing is, DBT, the way we model it is DBT depends on the things in the target platform, in this case BigQuery, and then the BigQuery things really are materialized from DBT, and so they depend on DBT as their upstream. And so you'll see this kind of pattern of alternating between DBT and BigQuery or Snowflake. And then for DBT sources, it will be the other way around.
Hira, do you think this would be helpful? This person probably dropped, but good answer.
Yeah, I just noticed that as well.
Yeah.
It's recorded, so we
it's recorded.
You can reference it.
Send a link or something. Yeah. Okay. So,
Josh, did you have a question still on? Actually, let's. Sorry, Jeff. I just realized I just jumped in and took over. So sorry.
Please do.
No worries.
Okay, Shiva. Let's go ahead and address Shiva's questions. Shiva, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So is it possible to initiate a scan from the CLI using an urn? Can we do that? I'm not sure. I just wanted to check on that. And extending onto that, whenever a scan gets initiated, does it do a full scan of the RDBMS or only the delta changes if I'm just doing it on a regular basis?
Yeah, I can talk about this. So the ingestion runs do, I guess it's kind of like a partial full scan, if you will. So we don't have the capability to, like, for a given urn, refresh the metadata. However, for some of the like more advanced SQL sources like Snowflake and BigQuery, we're pulling SQL logs. And so we do have logic in there to only parse or only read the parts of the audit logs that we haven't yet read. So that piece of it kind of does a delta, but scanning for, a list of schemas and kind of the core metadata, those we do a full scan of.
Okay. Cool.
If you were to want to explore this, which I think I'd say Harshal's kind of telling the right best practice, though, is I would think that you might be able to, if we can use environment variables, can we use environment variables fairly universally throughout recipes, Harshal?
Yeah, so Postgres, I think, actually is like not one that has like query log ingestion or anything like that. Same with Teradata. And so neither of those does this timestamp and only read the stuff after that, the audit log after that timestamp. If you want to scan an individual urn, you can use the filter patterns to kind of filter down for that urn.
That's what I was thinking.
So that's one option. I think the one thing to flag there is if you're doing that, make sure stateful ingestion is not on, because otherwise it will try and delete everything else. Or it will try to mark everything else as soft deleted.
Yeah. And so if you wanted to run the recipe from a command line with a table pattern, a database pattern, and make that like it's a variable that you would set before running that ingestion recipe, then that can be a means of at runtime kind of setting what the table pattern is or what the allow pattern would be.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And first question was around like, can we run using CLI the whole of that execution of the recipe? Not new one, but already an existing recipe that's already been ingested, right? Can we run?
Oh yeah. And so, and the trick there is just go to your recipe that runs in, the UI is a great way to mock this up. Just take that YAML, save it to a file, and then it's going to be, I think I'm linked up to this local environment. So if I was to do something like this, to demo data.yaml, and then I said DataHub ingest -f.
-c, I think.
Can you tell me the history of -c?
Yep.
They just run it from there, though. What's the history of -c, Harshal? I'd love to hear.
--config is
there you go.
full
Okay.
name.
Cool. All right. Oh, hey, as it sounds like we solved the OIDC problem. All right, good to hear. Thank you so much.
Cool. So does it mean does it look at the existing YAML which is already been configured before and then just use this trick and then just run that one, or complete new ingestion this one?
This qualifies as new ingestion. When you look at the UI, like let's look at the UI, it should show that I ran it from command line. Yep, see that CLI flag and all that?
Okay.
Yeah. So you should be a little, yeah, I would test out what you want to do. I mean, is it overall like there's a table you really care about the statistics or the updates to the metadata in a much like tighter cycle than other tables?
Yep.
So I think rather than try to make this overly dynamic, make 2 recipes about here are tables that need to be frequently updated and rerun that recipe on a tighter schedule. And then have a separate and use allow and deny list patterns in a static fashion. The more you do this like dynamic environment variable stuff, I think the more stuff you'll have to make that might not be as necessary to do. So
Cool. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So Swagbox. We have. Hey, Josh Garza, have you gotten a Swagbox before?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
I was gonna say, man,
You earned
I hope
one
so by
because
now. Yeah.
you
Somebody
earned
on
one
my
for that
team
layup around OIDC. So
Can I get one for my
Yeah.
team? For somebody on my team?
I'm good with that, Maggie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a couple numbers. I'll just give you one if that's all right. Basanta.
Yeah, of course Basanta should definitely get one.
Santa's always involved.
Josh, if you could just send me or Jeff in a DM with Basanta's email, we'll get that set up.
Perfect.
We're down to the last 2 minutes. Josh, I know you had a question around running DataHub in a virtual environment. I don't know.
I'll just have to figure it out. This is mainly like a Python thing, I think, for me. So I'll work on it. No worries.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Marathon number 4 is in the books.
Yep. Cool. Great.
All right, folks.
Ready.
Happy
Thursday.
Thanks for your time and your focus. We'll talk to y'all soon. We'll see ya.
Bye,
everybody.